Chapter 853. Who? The wind once again blew through the huge cavern, slowly blowing away the pile of ashes that was Goliath's body. Standing in front of the magic stone that was taller than him, Noah let out a deep breath and murmured, "Next, let's see if it works." In fact, Noah was not very interested in Goliath. Unlike ordinary adventurers, Noah did not want to obtain magic stones and dropped items from the dungeon to exchange for money, nor did he want to conquer powerful monsters to become famous. He only wanted to train his ability value and make himself stronger. Under such circumstances, instead of racking his brains to defeat the powerful floor master, Noah would rather continue to lead the monster army to train. That would be more efficient. Of course, defeating the floor master would give him many times more experience points than ordinary monsters. If it wasn't for Noah's extreme training method, perhaps defeating the floor master would have allowed him to gain more growth. In the past, Noah had always felt that it was better to lead more monsters to train than to defeat the floor master. However, after learning that the condition for leveling up was to do great deeds, which was similar to defeating a stronger opponent, Noah had the idea of fighting Goliath. Knowing that Finn wanted to test him, he still accepted the invitation to go with him. Firstly, Noah felt that Finn would not know the extent of his true strength. Secondly, it was because of Goliath. An opponent stronger than himself. Is that referring to Noah's full strength in the true sense of the situation where he even used his authority? Or did it mean that the level of the grace given by the gods was lower than the opponent's level? It was to prove this point that Noah targeted Goliath. If it was the former, then even if Noah defeated Goliath, he should not be able to level up. If it was the latter, then by the next time Noah updated his ability value, he would have definitely leveled up. After all, in terms of levels, Goliath was a LV4 floor master, and Noah was only LV1. If defeating an opponent with a higher level than oneself was considered a great achievement, then challenging an opponent with a higher level than oneself and challenging the floor master was still not enough to level up, then more than half of Eulalie's members would not be stuck at LV1. The next step was to wait until they returned and have Hasty help Noah upgrade his ability. Whether or not Noah could level up would depend on this. Right at this moment, a loud shout rang out. Amazing! Noah was startled by the loud cry. Before Noah could react, Tiona rushed in from outside the cave and grabbed onto one of Noah's arms as she yelled impatiently. What? What was that last ray of light? Was it a skill? Or magic? Being questioned by Tiona in such a furious manner, even Noah could not help but feel shocked. He was nearly incapable of responding. Then, Finn and the others came over as well. Tiona, Finn warned with a stern expression. An adventurer's ability value is a secret belonging to the individual and their clan. It cannot be made public. You are violating the rules. Sigh, Tiona puffed up her cheeks in dissatisfaction. What's wrong with that? If worse comes to worst, I'll just keep my mouth shut. All right, stop messing around, you idiot. Tiona pulled the reluctant Tiona off Noah. You're making things very difficult for her. There's nothing to be troubled about. Noah revealed a wry smile and raised the sword in the stone. He showed no intention of hiding it and simply revealed it. That is not my skill, nor my magic. It is just this sword's ability. The sword's ability. Finn and the others were stunned. The sword's ability. A stared intently at the sword and the stone in Noah's hand as if she wanted to see something from the sword. She looked rather adorable when she stared at it. In the face of Finn and the others' doubts, Noah naturally would not explain the origin of the noble artifact. That would only make things more confusing. So, Noah simply said so. Well, you can just treat it as a magic sword that will never be broken. A magic sword that will never shatter. Both Tiona and Tiona cried out in surprise. A magic sword. It could release magic but had a limited number of uses. Once the number of uses was exhausted, it would directly break. Even if it was a substitute, a weapon that didn't require chanting or any other conditions to use magic would definitely make anyone drool. Its market price, conservatively estimated, was at least 1 million Varus. It was both a magic sword and a luxury item. If there was no limit to the number of uses for such a miraculous weapon, it would be more precious than anything else in the world. At the very least, the members of Loki's clan looked at the sword and the stone in a different light. Liar. Leafia almost subconsciously retorted. If there is a magic sword that will never be broken, Eulalie. No, the whole world would be shocked and go crazy. I have never even heard of such a magic sword. Finn, Tiona, and Tiona did not say anything, but they tacitly agreed with Leafia's words. To be honest, they did not really believe it either. After all, to the people of this world, magic was very important. It was something that could be said to be a sure kill skill. A magic sword as a magic sword as a magic sword was extremely precious. If there was a magic sword that would never be broken, then such a magic sword would definitely be a major invention that could shake the whole world. In that case, how could others easily believe it? In response, Noah only curled his lips and smiled. I don't want you to believe it. It's just that you want to know, so I'm telling you. It's up to you whether you believe it or not. After saying that, Noah threw the weapon in his hand that was enough to shake the whole world in the eyes of Finn and the others. A golden ripple appeared out of thin air and swallowed the knight's sword that was thrown into the air. Then, it contracted and disappeared. Seeing this, Tiona asked curiously. Then, what is this? Hearing this, Noah glanced at Finn and the others and said with a smile that did not seem like a smile. An independent space that can store items. If I tell you this, you won't believe it, right? Everyone fell silent. An independent space that can store items. Just like what Noah said, it was something that could not be trusted. In this world, apart from adventurers, there was another type of person who would enter the underground city. They were non-combatants, known as supporters. As non-combatants, supporters existed to be responsible for the management of the adventurer's luggage and backup weapons, as well as the support of the items and the recovery of magic stones. If the adventurers had to carry their luggage and backup weapons, as well as the recovery of magic stones, not only would it affect the battle, but it would also be very inefficient. Therefore, when exploring the dungeon, the support in the team was a very important help. Not only could they allow the adventurers to fight without any worries, but they could also be responsible for other trivial matters and increase the efficiency of conquering the underground city. How could such an existence not be important? However, if there was really an independent space that could store items, there would basically be no need for supporters, and there would be a huge change in the strategy of conquering the underground city. This was also something that could shake the world. Who would be willing to believe it unconditionally? Let's not talk about this anymore, Finn said with a smile as he suppressed his various thoughts in his heart. Let's go to level 18 and have a good rest. Noah waved his hands to show that it was not a problem. Hey, little brother. Tiona pointed at the huge arm that had fallen to the ground not far away and did not disappear with Goliath. That's the dropped items and magic stones of the floor owner. It's very valuable and can definitely make you a huge profit. How are you going to deal with it? The dropped items and magic stones of the floor owner. Noah nodded. That's worth retrieving. As soon as he finished speaking, Noah waved his hand. Two huge golden ripples suddenly fluctuated between Goliath's arm and the magic stone, causing the two items to sink and disappear. Looking at this scene, everyone's eyes flickered, and they remained silent. Could there really be an independent space in this world that could store items? Chapter 854. Finally, we can rest. After passing through the slanted cave, Tiona immediately stretched her body. The members of the Rocky tribe heaved a sigh of relief, and the tense expressions on their faces began to relax. Noah, who was walking at the back of the team, looked forward through the cavernous passage. Noah was more or less surprised by the scene in front of him. This was the underground city. As an underground labyrinth, there shouldn't be any breathtaking scenery here. However, at this moment, Noah really wanted to exclaim at the scenery in front of him. A warm light that was no different from the sun shone down from above, illuminating the vast grassland. This place was full of gentle light and clean air that didn't match the underground labyrinth full of monsters. Thick trees covered with moss. Clear rivers that emitted gurgling sounds. In the sky, countless crystals grew seamlessly at the top of this floor, emitting a gentle light like the sun. The light that was no different from the sun was emitted from the crystals that covered the entire ceiling. It made this underground labyrinth look as if it had a sky. It was extremely beautiful. At this moment, Noah didn't even want to believe that he was in the underground city. Although the other floors were not without light, every place was a boring labyrinth, stone passages, and caverns. Coupled with the endless monsters, it was extremely annoying. Compared to those places, this place was simply heaven. The sky will adjust its brightness according to time, so this small world also has morning, noon, and night. Finn, who had been paying attention to Noah, explained when he saw Noah's surprised expression. The changes in time are not stable, and there are some slight differences with the surface. The time difference also fluctuates from time to time, so don't think that the daytime here is the same as the daytime above. Perhaps Eulalie has already ushered in the night. Is that so? Noah nodded, but he still looked at the beautiful scenery in front of him, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. The underground city is really incredible. That's why it can attract so many adventurers. Finn smiled, and immediately ordered the people around him. Alright, we'll set up camp here and wait for Riveria and Garrett's team to join us. The reinforcements will leave behind everything you need to set up camp, and then sell the magic stones and dropped items you've collected on the streets. Our goal is even lower, where the things are more valuable. Don't let the things on the upper levels take up space, understand? Yes. Some of the supporters who were carrying luggage immediately responded and started to set up camp together with the adventurers who were in charge of fighting. On the street, Noah looked at Tiona in surprise. In other words, there are villages or towns here. Yes, yes. Tiona nodded. Some distance away from here, there's a town run by a middle-leveled adventurer. It's similar to the dormitory street in the dungeon. In the past, the guild had set up a large-scale relay base in the dungeon so that the adventurers could explore the floors that they had yet to reach. That town was the prototype of this plan, Tiorn explained. However, although the 18th floor is a safe floor where there won't be any monsters, there will still be monsters from other floors that will arrive here and launch attacks. In order to survive the attacks of the monsters, the stronghold will have to hire adventurers who are level 3 and above to defend it. In addition to the costs of maintaining the stronghold, the huge costs directly caused the plan to be put on hold, so the guild gave up on this plan. However, after that, the adventurers who were able to reach this floor took over this plan and built a stronghold town on this floor, Tiona said as though she recalled something. By the way, little brother, if you intend to purchase the map of the floors behind, it seems like you'll have to be fleeced. Fleeced? Noah asked curiously. What do you mean? There are indeed many adventurers doing business in the town, but the prices of weapons, items, food, and other items are several times more expensive than those in Eulalia, Tiona said with a wry smile. It's not easy to secure supplies in the dungeon. Even water, food, and other supplies are difficult to supply. The support can only carry a limited number of items, so the prices are raised on purpose. It was the same logic as water being the most valuable thing in the desert. In a dangerous place like the dungeon, if one used up all their life-saving items, it would be extremely dangerous. Similarly, water and food were indispensable to people. However, there was no way to replenish supplies in the dungeon, so they could only purchase them in the town. In that case, the rarer something was, the more valuable it was. Since they had to buy it no matter what and couldn't be sold in other places, it was normal for the prices to be raised. On the contrary, if you intend to sell your items in the dungeon, the prices will be very, very low, Tiona said as though she was venting her frustrations. The items that can be carried are limited. When the magic stones and looted items fill up the backpack, we have to sell some of them. The adventurers in the town know this, so they'll lower the prices and sell them at a high price. They'll make a lot of money. Low price income. Selling them at a high price. This way, the adventurers would make a lot of money. I reckon that the prices of the dungeon maps here are several times more expensive than those sold in the guild. Tiona chuckled gloatingly. Little brother, you've just earned a lot from Goliath. This amount of money shouldn't be much. Noah rolled his eyes. How would Tiona know? To Noah, money wasn't an issue anymore. Of course, that didn't mean that Noah would be willing to be cheated. Tiona, don't chat, Finn said helplessly. We don't have enough manpower. Go and help. Got it. Both Tiona and Tiny nodded and walked towards the camp. Noah stood alone on the grassland and gazed at the beautiful scenery before him as he walked forward. Behind Noah, a series of footsteps slowly caught up with him. Noah was speechless as he turned his head and looked behind him. Aic followed Noah silently, her eyes fixed on Noah's back. Noah stopped in his tracks. Aic stopped in her tracks. Noah turned his body sideways. Aic immediately turned around, not letting Noah's back out of her line of sight. The corner of Noah's mouth twitched. He took a deep breath and started to spin. Aic blinked her eyes and started to spin around Noah without any hesitation. She wanted to look at Noah's back no matter what. This scene lasted for nearly a minute. After a minute, Noah stopped and covered his face. He couldn't bear to look at it. What kind of child's game was this? Most importantly, Aic played with Noah for a minute. Could it be that under Aic's beautiful appearance and impressive strength, there was a heart full of childishness hidden under her childishness? Natural. This girl, could it be that she's a natural airhead? With a bitter expression, Noah looked at Aic inside. Do you really want to see my ability value that much? Aic was startled. Although her expression didn't change, there was a hint of surprise in her eyes as if she was saying, "How did you know?" Thus, Noah was sure. This girl, there's definitely something wrong with her. With such an obvious reaction, it's easy to guess right. At that moment, Noah's expression became even more indescribable. Don't you know that a person's ability value is a secret? Aic nodded. I know. You still want to see my ability value even if you know? Noah couldn't help but ask. Why do you want to know my ability value so much? Aic went silent. Noah didn't rush her. He just looked at Aic and quietly waited for her answer. The surroundings were filled with an atmosphere of silence. After a while, Aic raised her head and looked into Noah's eyes as she said, "Don't worry. Why are you so strong?" Chapter 855. How can you be so strong? Hearing Aic's words, Noah was slightly startled. To be honest, Noah really didn't know what Aic's definition of strong was based on. In front of Aic, Noah had not used his authority, nor did he use the unique combat method from the Gate of Babylon. He had only used Enhance and Magic Cannon once. The rest of the time, he basically showed his close combat strength and the ability of his noble phantoms. If Noah didn't use the power of authority, Gate of Babylon, and the treasures inside it, or even enhance and magic cannon, he could only rely on his own melee ability. Even if the basic ability induced by a grace was included, Noah's combat power was only comparable to a LV5 adventurer. This strength, AIC herself could completely reach or even surpass it. Then, why would AIC care about this level of strength? Didn't all the level 1 adventurers in the family of Loki have this strength? Could it be that AIC would care so much about every strong person of the same level? Noah couldn't help but put his hand on his shoulder. Thinking about how AIC was so obsessed with his ability value, he suddenly said with some uncertainty. What you mean should be why I can have strength that ordinary adventurers can't reach without receiving the grace, right? AIC nodded gently. Her pretty face that didn't show any emotion revealed a serious atmosphere. Obviously, she was very concerned about this question. Knowing this, Noah realized that his previous thoughts might have been wrong. Originally, Noah thought that the reason why AIC kept staring at him was because he forced her to leave the first time they met and she was unwilling to accept it. Now it seemed that AIC was only concerned about how Noah could have the strength to force her to retreat without receiving the grace, right? And it was the kind that cared a lot. Why? Noah felt that there was no need to hide it, so he simply asked directly. What do you plan to do after knowing? Hearing this, AIC met Noah's gaze, lowered her head slightly, and said in a mosquito-like voice. I want to become stronger. Become stronger. It was completely unlike the thoughts of a weak girl whose appearance was comparable to that of a goddess. Noah scratched his cheek and asked in confusion. Since you want to become stronger, why don't you focus on conquering the dungeon? With the grace of the gods, the adventurers could completely be like the characters in the game, relying on killing monsters to gain experience points to allow themselves to grow. This didn't mean that the only way to become stronger was to kill monsters and level up, but it was undoubtedly a good shortcut. At least, from Noah's point of view, AIC was better off raiding dungeons and earning experience points instead of training in the deep mountains and forests for a few years to become stronger like he did in the past. In that case, it would definitely be more efficient than cultivating mindlessly. Noah was in such a situation now. To put it bluntly, after these few days of extreme training, Noah's basic abilities had basically reached the S stage, and the growth was much faster than when he was training in the mountains and forests. Conservatively speaking, the growth of these few days was enough to surpass the results of Noah's training in the mountains and forests. In that case, there was no reason to give up on this kind of rapid growth and turn to mindlessly training, right? It was a pity that Noah had forgotten. The so-called grace of the gods was just a catalyst that allowed the recipient to gain experience points to draw out the possibility in the body. If the possibility in a person's body was not high, then no matter how many monsters were killed and how much experience points were gained, they would not be able to grow. This was the reason why there were so many adventurers in Eulalia. There were people raiding dungeons every day, people killing monsters every day, and people gaining experience points every day, but there were only those who were truly strong. AIC was able to become the fastest person in the world to reach LV2 in just 1 year. She was also one of the few first-level adventurers in the entire Orally. She was even considered to be the strongest existence in LV5 by the gods. Her potential was so high that it could be imagined. But no matter how high it was, it did not mean that there was no limit. AIC lowered her head again, and her voice became very obvious. She was suppressing her emotions. I have reached the peak. When he heard this sentence, Noah almost did not understand what it meant. However, Noah did not really understand what grace was after all. AIC's words of reaching the peak made Noah realize. The girl in front of him had probably reached the limit of level 5, right? The possibility in her body had long been drawn out during the years of fighting in the dungeons. Noah heard that AIC had reached level 5 for more than 3 years. 3 years. With AIC's growth rate, it was not strange that she had reached the upper limit. Therefore, AIC could be evaluated as the strongest existence in LV5. Perhaps, no matter how many monsters AIC killed now, her basic ability proficiency would only increase by a few points. That way, she would not be able to become significantly stronger. Because of this, AIC cared about Noah. Because AIC saw another way to improve herself from Noah. Is that so? Noah smiled bitterly. If that's the case, then why don't you think of a way to level up? Level up. AIC reacted to this sentence and raised her head to look at Noah. If our basic ability is to draw out the possibility in the body, then level up is to increase the possibility, right? Noah crossed his arms. The Lord God of my family once said that the so-called upgrade is the enhancement of the basic ability that can be called evolution. If the improvement of the basic ability is compared to increasing the amount of water in a cup, then the upgrade is the improvement of the cup itself. You should understand this, right? Level up. AIC's eyes suddenly began to flicker. Noah knew that AIC listened to his words. If you level up to level 6, not only can you get the enhancement beyond the basic ability and become stronger, but you can also strengthen yourself as a vessel and continue to carry more possibilities. Noah said as if it had nothing to do with him. Instead of coming to me to find a way to become stronger, you might as well rely on the things you are familiar with to become stronger. Speaking of this, Noah suddenly remembered his power and involuntarily said such a sentence. Well, if I can use the incarnation of the priest now, then I can give you protection and temporarily increase your strength. Protection. AIC suddenly raised her head. What is that? Noah came back to his senses and smiled awkwardly. Nothing, forget about it. After saying that, Noah was about to turn around and leave, but the corner of his clothes was tightly grabbed by a jade hand. AIC stared into Noah's eyes and asked very persistently. What is protection? Noah's mouth twitched. While regretting his slip of the tongue, he couldn't help but look at AIC's lips. One of the powers of Noah's 10 incarnations was the priest. In addition to being able to give the power of language and text, it could also give protection to others. If the ability to protect AIC was used, then the protection refined by the power of the curse could become AIC's reliance. Before the power was exhausted, it could strengthen AIC's strength. However, it must be done by directly injecting it into the body of the target. To put it simply, it was kissing. Because of this, Noah subconsciously looked at AIC's lips that were close to him. On the other hand, Ace grabbed the corner of Noah's shirt tightly and stared at him. Her beautiful face inched closer to Noah's. The distance between a man and a woman's face was extremely short. As long as one of them slightly moved forward, they would be able to capture the other's lips. Not to mention Noah and AIC, from an outsider's point of view, these two people were looking at each other affectionately and were about to kiss. Thus, a hysterical voice rang out. Stop it. Chapter 856. Stop it right there. When this voice rang out and drilled into Noah and AIC's ears, a figure had already darted over and pulled AIC away before she could react. Noah only felt a soft body squeezing between him and AIC. Then, AIC, who was clutching the corner of his shirt tightly and putting her face in front of him, was pulled away. As for the person who squeezed between Noah and AIC, he shielded AIC behind him. He spread his arms and glared fiercely at Noah as if he was trying to protect AIC. Only then did Noah get a good look at the person's appearance. It was the pure-looking, long-eared, and outstanding archmage that Loki's spawn was preparing to inherit Riveria Leafia. At this moment, this elven girl, who looked to be only 15 or 16 years old, shielded AIC behind her. There was a trace of nervousness on her face, but more of it was determination. She pretended to glare fiercely at Noah. "No. You're not allowed to bully Miss AIC." It wasn't just her expression. Even her voice was trembling slightly. It was obvious that the elven girl was very nervous. However, even so, Leafia still insisted on shielding the bewildered AIC behind her. She stood in front of Noah with an imposing manner as if she was going to feed a tiger with her body. This amused Noah so much that he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "I don't intend to bully Miss AIC, do I?" "Liar. Liar." Leafia mustered up her courage and said. "Undoubtedly, you were so close to Miss AIC just now." Noah raised an eyebrow and said with a half-smile. "So, being close to her means you intend to bully Miss AIC?" Leafia was speechless. Or rather, it was as if the elven girl had only just calmed down. She turned around and looked at AIC, asking weakly. "Miss AIC, did he bully you?" "Leafia." AIC shook her head as if she had only just realized what had happened. It was also as if she had only just realized that the person protecting her was Leafia. "It's not like that." This sentence made Rifia choke. "I say, even if I wanted to bully your family's Miss AIC, the famous swordswoman, is not someone that anyone can bully, right?" Noah laughed out loud as if he was amused. "Besides, if I really wanted to bully Miss Wallenstein and had the ability to do so, you wouldn't be able to do anything, right?" "That's not the case," Leafia retorted. "If you intend to bully Miss AIC, then I will definitely protect her." "Oh." Noah suddenly smiled. "In other words, no matter how strong you are, and whether you can defeat me, you will jump out to protect Miss Wallenstein, right?" Leafia nodded heavily. Although there was still some nervousness on her face, she did not show any signs of hypocrisy or hesitation. This also made Noah understand why the elven girl was so wary of him all this time. Perhaps he just didn't want AIC to come into contact with a stranger like Noah and be deceived by a stranger like Noah. "Is that so?" Noah looked at Leafia mockingly. "Looks like you really like your family's Miss AIC." LLLL like. Leafia's face instantly turned red and she started stammering. It's not like that." "Oh." Noah was also amused by Leafia's behavior and said with a mischievous tone. "Does that mean you hate your family's Miss AIC?" "Of course not." Leafia's voice was even more exaggerated than before as she spoke in a high-pitched tone. "How could I possibly hate Miss AIC?" "What?" Noah shrugged. "Doesn't that mean you like her?" "No. It's not like that." "No. That's not right." "It's like that." "That's not right either." Leafia fell into a state of confusion. She was so flustered that she did not know what to do. She flailed her arms and legs and almost fainted. Seeing this, Noah, who had only intended to make a joke, couldn't help but feel strange. Could it be that this elven girl really had some strange thoughts about AIC, who was of the same gender? Or was it just pure longing? "Leafia." AIC tilted her head and looked at the confused Leafia. For a moment, she didn't know what to do. Noah shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He extended his hand and stroked the flustered Leafia's head. "All right, I was just teasing you. Calm down." Feeling the hand stroking her head, Leafia was taken aback and didn't react for a moment. Noah looked at AIC and said, "Since you followed me, why don't you lead the way?" "Since you're following me, why don't you lead the way?" "I'm going to the dungeon to buy a dungeon map." AIC blinked her eyes, but she didn't reject. She nodded and spoke softly to Leafia. "Leafia, help me tell Finn that I'm going to the town." Leafia, who was still in a daze from Noah's stroking, nodded her head subconsciously. Then, Noah and AIC looked at each other and walked forward. Only Leafia was left, staring blankly at Noah and AIC who were leaving side by side. This time, her gaze towards Noah was no longer guarded, only a little incredulous. Raising her hand and placing it on her head, Leafia murmured. He touched me." Just as Leafia was still in disbelief, a steady and dignified voice sounded from behind her. "Leafia, what are you doing in a place like this?" Leafia was shocked. She quickly turned around and looked behind her. There, Finn, Riveria, and Gareth, the three leaders of Loki's clan, walked over, causing Leafia to exclaim in surprise. "Lady Riveria. Lady Gareth. Have you arrived?" "Ah." Riveria nodded. "Goliath, the owner of the 17th floor, was defeated, so we didn't encounter too many obstacles and just arrived." "Where's AIC?" Gareth's thunderous voice resounded in the air. "The members all said they saw her coming here." "You came with her, but why aren't you with her?" Hearing Gareth's words, before Leafia could answer, Finn seemed to have thought of something. "Could it be that she's with Noah Doria?" "Yes. Yes." Only then did Leafia react. "Miss AIC went to the town with that gentleman." Finn, Riveria, and Gareth looked at each other. "Is that okay?" Riveria directly threw out this question. Letting AIC, as a clan leader, have too much contact with members of other clans will cause a lot of problems. The so-called clan, to put it bluntly, was a clan. Since there were clans, there was bound to be conflict. Whether it was from the perspective of interests or the relationship between the main gods of both sides, as long as there was a small reason, then the relationship between clans would become hostile, and vice versa. Excessive contact with members of other clans would indeed cause a lot of problems. Therefore, under normal circumstances, it was normal for two members of the clan tribe to be on guard against each other. This was also part of the reason why Finn wanted to test Noah's strength. Leafia hesitated for a moment and summoned her courage. "I think that gentleman shouldn't be a bad person." "Oh." Finn, Riveria, and Gareth were startled at the same time. "That's an interesting way of putting it." Gareth laughed. "Weren't you worried that AIC would come into contact with bad people and have been on guard against that man? Why did you come to this conclusion now?" "That man." Leafia couldn't help but touch her head. "That person touched my head." These words caused Finn and the others to stand up in surprise. Riveria, in particular, was even more surprised. "Leafia, you didn't refuse that man to touch you?" Riveria nodded, causing Finn, Riveria, and Gareth to look at each other in dismay. Elves were a very arrogant race. It wasn't that the people of this race were very arrogant, but it was the nature of elves. None of the elves were not outstanding in appearance. Because of this, they thought that people of other races were ugly. This made it so that if the elves didn't approve of someone, even the gods wouldn't allow them to touch them. It was equivalent to an instinct of the body. Regardless of whether the elves were willing or not, their bodies would not allow people with ugly hearts and desires to touch them. It was just like how a person's body would instinctively retract their hand when pricked by a needle. Unless it was someone approved of, the elves would instinctively fight back against the existence that intended to touch them. It was for this reason that Leafia, who had her head touched by Noah, found it inconceivable. "Undoubtedly, this is the first time we've met, but I didn't reject that gentleman's hand," the elven girl Leafia said. "So, I think that gentleman isn't someone with an ugly heart." Riveria, who was also an elf, was the first to agree with Leafia's words. "If that's the case, then there's no mistake." "All right." Finn pondered for a moment and looked in the direction of the town. "Then let's indulge AIC for now." Chapter 857. The 18th floor of the underground city did not have a maze, nor were there any complicated passages. It was just a large circular space. The cliff that surrounded the entire floor extended all the way to the top of the floor where the crystals grew. In the south was the cave that led to the 17th floor. In the north, there were sparse wetlands and forests. Monsters from the other floors usually wandered around here. In the west, there was a huge lake. On the lake, there was a rock island with a huge tree in the center. Under the roots of the huge tree, there was a hole in the tree. That was the entrance to the 19th floor. The town on the 18th floor was located at the highest point of the towering and huge island. It was a town that was completely made of wood. Almost every building in the town was made of wood. The town was built on top of a cliff. Steep slopes could be seen everywhere. Stairs made of round logs were set up everywhere. It was also surrounded by all kinds of crystals and rocks. At first glance, it looked very shabby. In fact, it was really shabby. Because monsters from the other floors would also attack the humans here, based on the nature of the town, the buildings in the town could be built simply. These simple and temporary buildings were almost all shops. Weapons shops, prop shops, inns, and a few other hotels were all shops that served adventurers as customers. And of course, those who could come to the 18th floor and come to this town were all adventurers. Walking on the streets, almost all the people who passed by Noah were adventurers. Only a small number of them were supporters. All of them were either equipped with heavy equipment or carrying extra-large backpacks, giving the entire town a strange and somber atmosphere. Under AIC's lead, Noah walked on this old street. On the street, almost all the adventurers who passed by would look at AIC who was walking with Noah. Their eyes and faces revealed a look of amazement and awe. Amazement was naturally because of AIC's appearance. Awe was directed at AIC's title of Swordswoman. As the Swordswoman, whose reputation was not only limited to Ololai, but also the world, there were almost no adventurers who did not know AIC. AIC seemed to be used to all of this. She still had that expressionless face of hers as she blindly walked forward. Noah was the only one who didn't look in AIC's direction. At this moment, Noah was following AIC's footsteps while observing the items in the surrounding stores and stalls, as well as the prices on the signs in front of the items. He fell into a state of speechlessness. From the beginning until now, Noah had not seen a single item with a price lower than 4 digits. Whether it was weapons, armor, or props, the basic price here was at least 3 zeros. Even food and drinking water were marked with prices of more than 4 digits. They were several times more expensive than outside, and some were even 10 times more expensive. There was only one word to describe it, and that was a pit. However, even though they knew that it was a scam, if the people here needed it, they would still have to buy it with a pained expression. It was because of this that the prices of the items here were so high. Moreover, the shop owners were relying on the fact that people could only buy from them. Not only were they arrogant, they were also lying there without even shouting. They were more arrogant than any adventurer's father. This made Noah have the urge to drag them out and beat them up. Then, not long after, AIC stopped and pointed to a stall in front. There is a map. Noah then retracted his gaze from the surrounding stores and stalls, and looked at the stall in front. There were weapons, armor, and some colorful potions in test tubes. Those potions were elixirs. They were also the so-called recovery potions. There were elixirs that could restore physical strength. There were elixirs that could heal injuries. There were elixirs that could replenish the mental strength consumed by using magic. There were also elixirs that could provide all kinds of support and strengthening. It could be said that everything was here. It was said that there was a type of recovery potion called the panacea that could even heal injuries no matter how serious they were. It had the effect of bringing the dead back to life. Even if one's face was disfigured, with the panacea, one could completely recover. The price of the panacea was around 4 to 500,000 veris. In these small stalls that could be seen everywhere, naturally, there was no such thing. Noah was only interested in the map of the underground city. It was a booklet that was made into a booklet. However, the price on the sign in front of the booklet made Noah's eyes twitch. 200,000 veris. This price, how should he describe it? 1 word, scam. 2 words, very scam. 3 words, very scam. At least, Noah remembered that when he went to the guild and asked to buy a detailed map of the underground city, the map was only 30,000 veris. It was almost 7 times more expensive. Rubbing his forehead, Noah walked forward under AIC's gaze, squatted down in front of the stall, and picked up the map. The owner of the stall just lay there, opened one eye, glanced at Noah, and then closed it, not even bothering to look at Noah. With such an attitude, it was impossible to get any customers in Eulalie. Only in the underground city could these guys be so arrogant. The owner of the stall even said this sentence while pretending to be asleep. Just look, don't flip. Who knows if you're going to record it and leave without buying. Noah didn't even bother with the owner of the stall. He roughly flipped through the booklet and found that the map recorded the 1st to 50th levels of the underground city in detail. No wonder it's so expensive, it extends to the 50th level. The maps sold by the guild up to the lower level, which was the 36th level, were only worth 30,000 veris. As there were very few adventurers who had been to the deeper level of the underground city, and the area was huge, it was impossible for people to wander around in such a dangerous place. As a result, the maps of the deeper level of the underground city were not very detailed, so the value of the maps varied. This map recorded the 37th to 50th levels very carelessly. But no matter what, there was still information about the entrance and exit to the upper level and the entrance and exit to the lower level. This was enough to make the map valuable. In the guild, this map could be sold for 70 to 80,000 veris, right? In other words, it was still several times more expensive. However, Noah didn't say much. After all, the people here didn't bargain. Noah directly put the booklet in his hand into his arms, took out a bag full of gold coins, threw it on the stall, and turned to leave. This way, Noah would be able to go to the lower floors. Seeing Noah coming back, AIC, who knew the purpose of Noah's trip, spoke directly. Are you going back? Yes. Noah nodded. This time, I came with you for the map, and also to see if defeating Goliath would allow me, who is only LV1, to level up. Level up? AIC looked straight at Noah with an inexplicable color in her eyes. You're planning to level up in less than 5 days after getting the grace. Why? Noah smiled slightly. Are you afraid that I'll break your world record of being the fastest to reach LV2? Hearing this, AIC shook her head and lowered her head. It's just that I'm envious of you, being able to become strong so quickly, envious. The smile on Noah's face slowly disappeared and was replaced with a sigh. Do you want to become strong? Or do you just want to obtain power? AIC's expression became one of confusion. She looked as though she was asking, is there a difference? If you want to become strong, there is no shortcut, said Noah calmly. However, if you want to obtain power, there is no need to limit yourself. Powerful weapons and props can help you reach your goal. After saying that, Noah extended his hand and a golden ripple appeared above him. The ripple bounced off the sword and the stone, which was radiating a golden light. Shang! Noah stabbed the sword and the stone into the ground and stood before AIC. AIC's gaze turned toward the sword and the stone at almost the same time. I'll lend you this sword for now. Noah turned around. After you've experienced its power, you can tell me the answer when you return. After saying that, Noah left. A.I.C. looked at the sword and the stone in silence. Chapter 858. When Noah returned to the ground, the sky had just turned dark. In other words, Noah had been fighting in the dungeon for a whole day. It's just that this time, Noah didn't train his basic abilities to the limit. He just killed a LV4 floor master. He wanted to see if he could level up. Driven by such a mood, Noah returned home without any delay. After telling Hestia about killing Goliath, he pulled Hestia, who was speechless, to prepare to upgrade his ability value. Really, a LV1 player went to challenge a LV4 floor master or something. I've never even heard of such a thing before. Sitting on Noah's back, Hestia took out a sharp needle and muttered to herself, "That's right. Also, I've never heard of anyone wanting to level up after receiving that favor for less than 5 days." LV1 and LV2 were the dividing line between junior adventurers and senior adventurers. Only by reaching LV2 could one get the title given by the gods and be called a senior adventurer. Generally speaking, if one wanted to upgrade from LV1 to LV2, it would take at least 3 years. A.I.C. spent a year to upgrade to LV2, which was known as the fastest upgrade record in the world. Upgrading in less than 5 days. That was no longer a question of whether the record could be broken, but a question of whether it was normal. If the gods knew that someone rose to LV2 in less than 5 days, those gods who liked to join in the fun would definitely do a lot of earth-shattering things. In order to prevent such a thing from happening, Hestia did not advocate Noah to consider upgrading early, but to start with magic first. As a result, Noah not only did not listen, but also ran to challenge the floor master of the 17th floor, which made Hestia quite depressed. However, even if depressed, Hestia still did not refuse Noah's request. She pricked her finger with a needle and dripped a drop of blood on Noah's back. The familiar blue light bloomed from the ability value engraving on Noah's back. The mysterious text left Noah's back and moved up and down in the blue light. Hestia updated, modified, and rewrote these mysterious texts to help Noah upgrade the ability value. With the change of the sacred text above, a brand new value appeared in front of Hestia's eyes. To be honest, apart from other factors, Hestia was also very concerned about whether Noah could level up or not. So, almost as soon as the new ability value appeared, Hestia looked at it. Noah Doria LV. 1 power, S, 968, SS, 1068, durability, S, 980, SS, 1078, dexterity, S, 972, SS, 1085, agility, S, 993, SS, 1093, magic power, A, 888, SS, 1017, magic skills frowny face protection from the world, permanent skill. Equal to luck. Events that were directly related to luck would eventually lead to the most favorable outcome. The moment she saw the ability value, Hestia's eyes widened and she cried out. What the hell is this? Noya, who was also looking forward to leveling up, was startled by Hestia's shout. He even stood up subconsciously. Whoa! Hestia, who was sitting on Noah's back, was directly flipped over and fell on the bed. Her 2 legs were directly placed on Noah's shoulders, revealing the scenery under her skirt in front of Noah. Not only that, even if she was lying there, Hestia's plump upper body still defied the law of gravity. Noah didn't know where to look and could only helplessly pull Hestia up. What's wrong? Why are you making such a fuss? Hestia didn't speak. She just stared at Noah without saying a word. She even moved her face closer to Noah's, to the point where their foreheads were almost touching. Looking at Hestia's cute face slowly moving closer to him, Noah blinked. Do you want to kiss me? Who wants to kiss you? Hestia's pretty face blushed. She suddenly pulled away and stared at Noah. I want to see what kind of structure a freak like you has. Why did your ability value change like that? Hearing Hestia's words, Noah's curiosity was completely aroused. What's my ability value changed? Hestia puffed up her cheeks and recorded all the updated ability values on a parchment paper and handed it to Noah. See for yourself. Noah directly took the parchment paper and looked at the ability value. When he saw his current ability value, he couldn't help but be stunned. SS. What does this mean? Didn't they say that the highest level of basic ability was S stage, and the upper limit of proficiency was 999? Then what's the deal with the SS stage and the thousands of proficiency points? What's going on? Noah cast his gaze on Hestia. Why is this ability value status appearing? How would I know? Hestia said as if she was in a difficult situation. So far, this hasn't happened. I want to ask you what's going on. Noah frowned. For Noah, who wasn't a native of this world, if even Hestia, who was a god and had lived for billions of years, couldn't understand this situation, then it was even more impossible for him to understand. In other words, the SS stage basic ability value and the thousands of proficiency points for each basic ability would become an unsolved mystery. No. It couldn't be said to be an unsolved mystery. At least, that was what Hestia said. You've exceeded the upper limit of your ability value, Noah. Exceeded the upper limit of my ability value? Noah asked in confusion. Is it possible to exceed the upper limit of a basic ability value? I'm not sure. At least, I've never heard of anyone other than you surpassing the upper limit, Hestia said as she raised a finger. But Noah, I have to tell you that the information about your ability value is the result of long-term verification and analysis since we gods descended to this world. The highest level of basic ability is S stage, and the upper limit of proficiency is 999. This information was also summarized by us gods over the past 1,000 years. It's only because no one has ever exceeded the upper limit that we came up with this theory. What's certain is that as children of this world, there are still possibilities in your body that even we gods can't understand. Perhaps the possibilities in your body are so amazing that you can break the summary of the past 1,000 years. Hestia took the paper from Noah's hand, looked at the numbers on it, and said word by word, "That's right." In other words, you've reached a level that no one has reached in the past 1,000 years. Really? Noah smiled bitterly. But I still haven't been able to level up. No, you killed a LV4 floor master as a LV1. That's already a great achievement. You have indeed accumulated a lot of experience points. Hestia frowned her cute eyebrows. If you were an ordinary level 1, you would have already leveled up. But you haven't leveled up. It seems that your container is too big. If you want to evolve the container itself, you need another condition. Noah was refreshed and quickly asked. What condition? You should know that only when your basic ability evaluation reaches D stage or above can you be qualified to level up, right? Hestia said. After all, the basic ability accumulated in a level is just the cornerstone needed to level up. Your current situation is that the container itself is too big. If you want to evolve, you have to lay down more cornerstones. Noah understood. In other words, I have to continue to train my basic ability. That's right. Hestia curled her lips. Although, I don't know if the SS stage of your all ability value is not enough to be your cornerstone and allow you to evolve. I just know how terrifying you are as a vessel. Noah ignored Hestia's sarcasm and slowly tightened his grip on the paper in his hand. Chapter 859. In the deep area of the dungeon, the 37th floor was also known as the White Palace. The reason why it had this name was because it had white walls and a circular structure that looked like a castle. It was a structure composed of large circular walls that were 5 stories high. In the center of this floor, there were stairs that led to the next floor. The area it occupied was almost comparable to a huge city. It was very vast. Of course, as the first floor of the deep area, the monsters on the 37th floor were the most outstanding in the area above the 40th floor. Not only were there many of them, but their levels were also quite high. Even the interval between their berth in the dungeon was very short. If one was not careful, even a level 1 adventurer above level 5 would be besieged to death. One must not be careless. There would be many so-called warrior-type monsters on this floor. Starting from the 15th floor of the middle area of the dungeon, there was a level 2 Minotaur monster called the Minotaur. On the 37th floor, there were monsters that were similar to the Minotaur. They had the physique of a ferocious bull. In addition, there were all kinds of monsters that had some similar structures to humans rampaging in this white palace. The levels of these monsters were between level 3 to level 4. In addition, the speed of their birth was very fast. After a while, they would form a certain number and become a real army. Therefore, even a level 1 adventurer of level 5 could not ignore the danger on this floor. Under such circumstances, there was an adventurer whose real level was only level 1 who was deep in the siege of a large group of ferocious bull monsters at this time. Rumble. There were definitely hundreds of ferocious bull monsters holding huge stone weapons. Each monster's weapon had a bright red color, as if it was dyed with blood. With the trembling sound that resounded throughout the entire space, the ferocious bull's eyes were red, and white gas was coming out of its nostrils. Its strong and powerful hooves trampled on the ground and rushed toward the thin figure. The scene of hundreds of huge ferocious bull monsters at least 2 meters tall running in groups. If one word was to describe it, it would be shocking. In the trembling sound of the earth, the distance between the disproportionate monster army and the thin figure was almost wiped out in the blink of an eye. Then, like a tsunami, the endless wave of monsters instantly drowned that figure. Facing the large group of monsters, Noah did not move. His expression did not even change. In his hand was a knight's sword that was very similar to the sword in the stone that he had lent to AIC. Compared to the sword in the stone, this knight's sword was more quaint. However, the golden radiance flowing through it was more dazzling. If the people from the Shape Moon world were here, they would definitely recognize this world-famous weapon. Its name was Excalibur. It was an A++ level relic that was definitely more powerful than the relic of humans and the relic of armies. Holding the famous holy sword in his hand, Noah calmly looked at the group of monsters that were charging at him. It was only until the bull monster that was charging at the forefront that he finally made his move when the white gas that was spurting out of its nostrils almost hit him. Clang! With just a light sidestep, he avoided the charging bull monster. The holy sword in Noah's hand suddenly flashed and turned into a sword light. It swept across the neck of the first monster that was charging in front of him. Poochie! Very neatly, a bull's head fell from the monster's body, bringing a burst of blood mist. It also made the monster, who was at least LV3 or above, stiffen and slowly fall to the ground. At the same time, the ferocious bull monsters jumped, pounced, charged, and waved their weapons to attack Noah. They pounced from the front, back, left, right, and the sky, instantly surrounding Noah. Facing this situation, Noah did not retreat. Instead, he moved forward. With a strange twist, he changed his speed and dodged to the side. At the same time, the cold sword light lit up again. Poochie! The lightning-like sword cut through the arm of the ferocious bull monster and cut it off with a crisp tearing sound, letting the arm fall to the ground. While the monster let out a painful scream, Noah rushed forward, raised his sword, and let the huge bull's head fly to the sky again and fall to the ground. Just like that, Noah was like a leaf in a stormy sea, flashing left and right as the wave of monsters hit back and forth. Sometimes he rushed forward. Sometimes he retreated. Sometimes he dodged to the left. Sometimes he dodged to the right. He didn't let any monster touch his body. Poochie poochie poochie. As Noah moved his body agilely, every 2 to 3 seconds, a huge bull head would be tossed into the air, bringing with it bursts of crimson blood that splattered all over the sky. The monsters that fell to the ground turned into ashes one by one, leaving only fist-sized magic stones and horns, completely disappearing from this space. Because of the skill, World's protection, that could bring great luck, the monsters that Noah killed almost all dropped items. Players could only obtain loot from monsters they killed when they were very lucky. Noah, on the other hand, only obtained magic stones when his luck was really bad. This was the difference. It didn't take long for the hundreds of bull-sized monsters to be completely slaughtered, leaving behind only a pile of magic stones and dropped items. Phew, Noah gently exhaled. Crack, almost at the same time, the ground in front of him cracked, causing the ferocious bull monsters with red eyes to suddenly drill out of the ground and stare in Noah's direction. The 37th floor was such a terrifying place. The frequency of monsters being born was simply unimaginable. However, for Noah, this situation was something he was happy to see. After all, Noah originally came to the deeper areas to be able to fight for more powerful monsters to hone his basic abilities. Just as Noah was about to continue to rush forward, Noah's heart suddenly moved, causing him to stop. In his heart, on the surface of a roulette connected to 10 patterns, a subtle brilliance flowed and disappeared in the blink of an eye. I see. Noah murmured. It's already been a month. Yes. Noah had been in this world for a full month. Because of the turbulence in between the worlds, it was best not to use Noah's authority for a month when he first arrived in this world. Once used, it would have a great impact on the world. Only when the world adapted to the power in Noah's body that did not belong to this world and was too powerful, could Noah use the power that could kill gods without restraint. Now, a month had passed. This world had finally adapted to Noah's authority. Therefore, Noah's authority had an active reaction. Feeling the activity of that authority in his body, Noah suddenly smiled as he looked at the bull-like monsters that broke out of the ground one after another, gripping their stone weapons tightly as they prepared to charge towards him. Just in time, it's time for me to try my Beast Horde avatar. One of Noah's 10 avatars was the authority of Beast Horde. It was an incarnation that was originally used to summon Bo and Drager, who were residing in their souls, to fight for Noah. However, when Bo and Drager's consciousness were removed by Gaia and Alea, Noah's Beast Horde avatar's ability changed. Now, it was time to test the true power of this avatar. Thou hast violated the contract and brought evil to the world. When the long-awaited words reverberated in this space, Noah's body suddenly exploded with a shocking amount of magic. The Lord said, sinners must be punished. Their backs will be crushed, their bones, hair, and brains will be dug out, and their blood and mud will be trampled on. If I have sharp teeth, I will follow the Lord's words and give the person who violated the contract a hammer of destruction. In Noah's heart, on one of the corners of the stone plate that was connected to the 10 patterns, a pattern of 100 beasts running wildly suddenly lit up. Clang! Suddenly, around Noah's body, a dazzling light burst out. Immediately, in the light, pairs of eyes flashing fiercely appeared one by one. Along with them, there were also many black shadows. Chapter 860. Clang! With Noah as the center, the dazzling light almost illuminated the entire 37th floor of the dungeon. The ferocious bull monsters that had just been born seemed to have instinctively felt that something extremely dangerous was about to be born. They swallowed the roar that had already reached their throats. They actually began to involuntarily retreat, showing some fear. Especially when pairs of flashing eyes and black shadows appeared in the dazzling light, these monsters of LV3 and above all let out threatening cries. That look was simply like a frightened puppy that was trying to scare someone. However, when the dazzling light gradually dimmed, revealing the full appearance of the black shadows, the fierce bull monsters with stone weapons in their hands suddenly froze, and their bodies became sluggish. This was because the black shadows that were born from the dazzling light were exactly the same as them. They had the head of a cow and the body of a human. They were more than 2 meters tall, and the only difference was that they did not hold any stone weapons in their hands. They were monsters with the physique of a cow. Woo 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 woo. The next moment, the fierce bull monsters let out earth-shattering roars. Noah, who was holding the holy sword, stood in the middle of this group of fierce bull monsters. He raised his head and looked at the fierce bull monsters that were frozen in front of him, and a flash of light flashed across his eyes. Woo 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 woo. The fierce bull monsters that lined up around Noah like an army suddenly roared in unison, and in the roar that made the earth tremble, they charged out. Woo 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 woo. The real fierce bull monsters with thick stone weapons in their hands seemed to have been awakened. They let out roars that were unwilling to be outdone, and without any hesitation, they also charged forward. On one side, there was a neat and orderly legion of fierce bull monsters that seemed to be commanded by something. On the other side, there was no formation to speak of. They were just charging forward casually, but they were also fierce bull monsters with thick stone weapons in their hands. The two monster legions charged at each other and then collided fiercely. If there was anything to describe the following battle, there was only one sentence. It was a one-sided battle. It was truly a one-sided battle. Moreover, the one who fell was the one holding the stone weapon. Swish! Only to see the fierce bull monsters facing their opponents one by one, fiercely brandishing the thick and heavy stone weapons in their hands, carrying a fierce whistling sound, fiercely smashing the weapons towards the fierce bull monsters who had no weapons. Buzz! However, at this moment, the bodies of the fierce bull monsters that were attacked by the heavy stone weapons shone with a brilliant white light. When the thick and heavy stone weapon was swung towards the opponent's body, it was immediately enveloped by a brilliant white light. Suddenly, the stone weapons trembled, and as if they were neatly cut into cubes, white lines spread out on their surfaces. Bang! Following the spreading white lines, the thick and heavy stone weapons were blasted apart and turned into fragments. Woo 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 woo. Immediately, the fierce bull monsters shrouded in brilliant white light fiercely pounced on the fierce bull monsters that had lost their weapons and had no time to react. The sharp horns directly pierced into the bodies of the fierce bull monsters. The battle between the two monster legions formed by the fierce bull monsters was surprisingly similar no matter which corner it was in. The fierce bull monsters that were born from the underground city with stone weapons in their hands were the first to attack. Unfortunately, they were either shattered by the weapons they wielded against the bull monsters that were shrouded in dazzling white light, pierced through their bodies by the sharp horns of their opponents, or torn into pieces by the sharp fangs of their opponents. There was no suspense at all. Or they were shrouded in the brilliant white light together with their weapons. White lines spread out on the surface of their bodies, evenly dividing them into cubes. Then along those white lines, they exploded extremely neatly, dying without a complete corpse. Under such circumstances, in less than a minute, the fierce bull monsters with stone weapons in their hands all disappeared from the entire battlefield. All that was left were the ferocious bull monsters shrouded in brilliant white light. Woo 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 woo. As if celebrating their victory, the fierce bull monsters shrouded in brilliant white light let out spirited roars. Whing! As if retreating after accomplishing their mission, the fierce bull monsters began to slowly turn into light particles and dissipate in the air. Seeing this, Noah gradually retracted the astonishing magic surging wildly in his body and smiled. Using pure magic to arbitrarily create all kinds of tamed beasts and then control the tamed beasts. This was the true ability of Noah's beast horde incarnation. In the past, because of the relationship between Bio and Draeger, the incarnation's ability was limited from create tamed beasts to summon tamed beasts. Now, after Gaia and Alea removed the consciousness of Bio and Drager from Noah's soul, the beast horde incarnation finally displayed its true ability. Using magic to construct the tamed beast's body, creating tamed beasts with all kinds of shapes and sizes. No matter what kind of tamed beast it created, it would have the ability to crush everything. And no matter what kind of tamed beast it created, the fewer there were, the stronger it would be. If there was only one tamed beast, then its strength would definitely be comparable to Bio and Drager. If he chose to create multiple tamed beasts, then according to the number of tamed beasts, the power would be evenly distributed. Using the beast horde incarnation, the choice of quality or quantity was all up to Noah. It could be said that this incarnation had a very high degree of freedom. It was not like before, where it was limited to Bio and Drager. Then, it's time to go back. Looking at the empty white palace, Noah estimated the time and threw the sacred sword in his hand into the golden ripples beside him. After that, he moved in the direction of the tunnel leading to the 36th floor. After careful calculation, Noah had not returned home for nearly half a month. That was because it would take at least 1 or 2 days just to travel to the 37th floor. Therefore, the higher the level of the adventurer, the longer the time they had to stay in the dungeon. Therefore, in the first half of the month after he came to this world, Noah had been wandering around the upper and middle floors. It was not until half a month ago that he told Hastia that he wanted to go to the lower and middle floors. He had stayed in the dungeon for half a month. After half a month, Noah felt that it was time for him to go back. Otherwise, who knew what would happen to the goddess who hid at home all day? I left enough money for Hastia. At least she won't starve to death, right? After spending a day, Noah returned to the 18th floor from the 37th floor. Then, he rested for another day on the 18th floor. On the afternoon of the third day, he finally left the dungeon and entered the Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel was a facility of the guild. Here, there was a shower for the adventurers, who had worked hard in the dungeon for a long time and were covered in dust and sweat, to change their clothes and bathe. After taking a refreshing bath, Noah came out of the shower and left the Tower of Babel without stopping. He walked in the direction of his home. Besides, I haven't updated my ability points for half a month. I wonder how much my ability points have improved. In the past, Hastia would help Noah to update his ability points almost every day. At that time, Noah's growth in one day was already very amazing. Now, after half a month, Noah, who had been training in the lower and middle floors and earning more experience points, had no reason not to have amazing growth. Noah was very much looking forward to it. However, when Noah arrived at a spot not far from his home, the scene that appeared in front of him caused him to be somewhat stunned. That was because a person was walking to the door of Noah and Hastia's house. He did not even knock on the door. Instead, he took out a key, opened the door, and walked in directly. Seeing this, Noah blinked his eyes. What's going on? Chapter 861. Noah. When Noah walked into the house, Hestia threw herself at Noah, hugged his waist, and buried her face in Noah's belly. She kept rubbing against him with tears in her eyes. You're finally back. If you don't come back, I'll be worried to death. Didn't I tell you that I'll go to the lower floors and won't be back for a while? Noah, who was hugged by Hestia, could only hug her back with a bitter smile on his face. Also, I've told you before, don't hug me for no reason. When are you going to change this habit of yours? This is not a habit. I won't do this to others. Hestia lifted her lovely face from Noah's arms and puffed up her cheeks. This intimate contact is only limited to you, my first family member and the closest person to me. I won't do this to anyone else except you. In the heavenly realm, Hestia was one of the 3 goddesses known as the Virgin Goddess. Although Hestia's petite and cute appearance and her rather unrestrained intimate behavior towards Noah did not make people think that she would hug him at any time. As a matter of fact, hugging a man of the opposite sex like this would only do that to Noah, who didn't care about her poverty and wealth, kindly took her in, and even joined her clan. As a matter of fact, Noah had never seen Hestia being so intimate with anyone before. At that moment, Noah could only continue to smile bitterly, but his eyes were fixed on the living room. Over there, the person who had just opened the door with the key and walked into the house was like a little police officer facing an instructor. His back was straight, his hands were pressed against his thighs, and his face was full of nervousness and sweat as he spoke. Hello. His voice was slightly out of tune. It could be seen that the person was indeed quite nervous. It was a boy who looked to be about 14 or 15 years old. He was wearing the armor of a novice adventurer and had a short knife at his waist. He had white hair and red eyes, which made people think of a rabbit. The boy not only stood very straight as if he was saluting, but he also suddenly bent down and bowed to Noah. As he did so, he introduced himself in a nervous tone. I'm Bell Crone. He was an adventurer who had only recently joined Hestia's clan. Please advise me. An adventurer who joined Hestia's family. Noah looked at Hestia with some surprise. In other words, he's a new member of your family. Hestia let go of Noah's waist and raised her head with a proud look on her face. That's right, Bale is a new member of the clan tribe that I recently accepted. I met this child by chance on the street, and because he was looking for a clan tribe that he could join, I invited him. I see. Noah understood. So that's why he has the key to this house. Yes. Hestia was like a small adult. She seemed to want to pat Noah's shoulder, but because of her height, in the end, she could only pat Noah's waist. You are the leader of Hestia's family. You have to take care of the newcomer. Leader. Noah was speechless. Generally speaking, in a family, other than the main god, there would be a leader who was responsible for the entire family's affairs, and even managing the entire family's members and leading the family's activities. Finn was the leader of Loki's family. And the leader of Hestia's family, other than Noah who joined the family from the beginning, who else could it be? However, unlike Loki's family, Hestia's family currently only had two members, Noah and Bel. So, this so-called leader was really in name only. Of course, this was Noah's idea. Bel, on the other hand, bowed to Noah with an imposing manner. Please advise me. Leader. All right. Noah scratched his cheek and stretched out his hand to Bel. Since we are both members of the same family, I hope we can get along well. Yes. Bel finally reacted. He hurriedly stretched out his two hands and respectfully shook Noah's hand with a grateful expression. I will work hard. Noah was a little uncomfortable being treated with such a grateful attitude by Bel. He could only turn his head and look in Hestia's direction. Hestia deliberately lowered her voice and whispered into Noah's ear, "Before this child joined our family, he had visited many of the families in Eulalia. However, because this child came from outside the city and was just a child in the countryside before, those family clans with some power looked down on him. Therefore, he seems to be very afraid that you will object to him staying here." Is that so? Noah sighed and looked at Bel. Don't worry, I won't look down on a person because of his background or identity. As long as you have a good character, I won't object to you staying here. Really? Bale's nervous face was suddenly filled with joy, and he made a solemn vow. I will never do anything bad. Leader. That's good. Noah smiled bitterly. There is just one room left in the house. You should have moved in already, right? There were a total of 3 rooms in the house, facing the main hall. Noah's room was in the middle. Hestia's room was on the left. The room on the right was empty. Since Belle had the key to the house, he should have moved into the empty room already. Yes. Belle was so nervous that he began to sweat. If it's inconvenient, I can sleep on the sofa in the main hall. It's not a problem. I didn't say that. Noah's mouth twitched. Well, anyway, Belle has been an adventurer for a shorter time than you. Noah, as the leader, you should teach him how to fight in the dungeon and earn money. Hestia clapped her hands. Let's end our first meeting here. It's rare that all the family members are here, so let's have a small party as a welcome party for Belle. Belle was flattered. No. No need, great goddess, how can you spend money for me? Well, don't be so polite, Belle. Hestia waved her hand and said generously. Don't look at us like that. We're actually very rich. The corner of Noah's eyes twitched fiercely when he heard that. Could it be that this Lolita goddess was treating all of his personal property as the public property of the clan tribe? That's why, Bale, go out now and buy all the good stuff you can find, Hestia said as she handed a purse full of gold coins to Bale. It's okay to spend all of it. Looking at the money pouch, the corners of Noah's eyes twitched. He was speechless. That pouch seemed to be the allowance that Noah had given to Hestia half a month ago when he was preparing to go to the dungeon. Because of Noah's return, Hestia generously took out the rest of her living expenses. That must be it, right? However, the simple-minded Belle seemed to believe Hestia's nonsense. He took the purse full of gold coins with a look of admiration and immediately walked out of the house and went to the street. After Bale left the house, Hestia's little adult appearance immediately disappeared. Instead, she said to Noah with a playful smile on her face. Before that child comes back, do you want to upgrade your ability value? Noah rolled his eyes in annoyance, but he still nodded helplessly. After all, Noah was very concerned about his growth in the past half a month. In the living room, Noah sat on the sofa with his arms bared. His back was exposed to Hestia, who was sitting behind him. Hestia dripped a drop of divine blood on Noah's back and began to upgrade her ability value. Perhaps because there was a second member, Hestia did not casually pull people into her room and make them lie on the bed to upgrade their ability value. Instead, she did it in the living room. A faint blue light constantly fluctuated on Noah's back. Mysterious words moved back and forth. Hestia stared at the words. Clearly, she was very concerned about Noah's current progress. After a while, Hestia's eyes shone with a strange light. Chapter 862. The blue light on Noah's back slowly dimmed until it completely disappeared. Thus, the ability value update ended. Noah immediately turned his head and looked at Hestia. Hestia smiled at Noah's gaze and handed the ability value status that was translated into the common language by the sacred text to Noah. Noah silently took it and looked at it. Noah Doria LV. 1 Power, SSS, 1441, SSS, 2000, Durability, SSS, 1472, SSS, 2000, Dexterity, SSS, 1468, SSS, 2000, Agility, SSS, 1477, SSS, 2000, Magic Power, SSS, 1453, SSS, 2000, Magic Skill, Protection from the World, Permanent Skill. It was equivalent to luck. Events that were directly related to luck would eventually lead to the most favorable outcome. Half a month ago, before Noah went to the lower and deeper levels of the dungeon, his ability value had broken through the upper limit of the SS stage and reached the SSS stage. Originally, the SS stage was a stage that had never appeared before, let alone the SSS stage. Therefore, Hestia had a headache about this kind of ability value. Noah had an even bigger headache. Because even after reaching the SSS stage, Noah still couldn't meet the requirements to level up. Without any other choice, Noah decided to go to the lower and deeper levels of the dungeon and train for a period of time. Now, after half a month, Noah was still at the SSS stage of his all-around strength. However, the proficiency of each basic ability was still at 2000, not even a little bit more. It was as if the proficiency couldn't be increased anymore and finally reached a certain requirement and didn't need to continue to increase. Noah's eyes lit up. He quickly turned his head and looked at Hestia. Facing Noah, Hestia revealed a holy smile that was very consistent with the name of a goddess. "Congratulations, Noah." Hearing this, how could Noah not understand what the result was? The SSS stage of the SSS stage, and the proficiency of each basic ability has reached 2000. This foundation stone has finally filled you, the vessel, and allowed you to evolve to the next stage. Hestia didn't disappoint Noah's expectations. She told him the news that Noah had been waiting for about a month. "Now, you can level up." Everyone suddenly became silent. Phew. Noah let out a sigh of relief. He felt that the extreme training for the past month had not been in vain. "I was worried, what if I couldn't meet the requirements?" "I'm not worried." Hestia shook her head with a smile. "Whether it's potential, talent, possibility, or real strength, you have subverted my understanding again and again. If even you can't level up, then I really don't believe that any child in this world can level up." Hearing Hestia's great evaluation of himself, Noah just smiled and looked at the level column of the ability value recorded on the record paper in his hand. At this time, Noah's level was still at LV1. This was because Hestia had not yet extracted the EXP needed to level Noah up to LV2. You still need to decide on the development ability, right? Development ability. It was an ability that could only be learned when leveling up. This ability was different in nature from the basic ability. It could further develop and strengthen special or professional abilities. For example, most blacksmiths could obtain the development ability called forging, which made the quality of the equipment they made better, and even added some functions and effects. Another example was that most of the pharmacists who could concoct various elixirs could obtain the development ability called reconciliation, which made the effects of the elixirs they concocted better, and they could concoct a variety of recovery medicines with magical effects. Therefore, what kind of development ability could be learned depended on what kind of actions the person who received the favor had taken and what kind of experience points they had accumulated. Noah was neither a blacksmith nor a pharmacist. Naturally, it was impossible for him to obtain the two development abilities of training and reconciliation. If he didn't get any experience points worth mentioning, then even if he leveled up, he might not be able to learn the development ability. On the contrary, as long as he got the appropriate experience points, it was possible to have multiple development abilities. But when leveling up, he could only get one development ability. Hestia didn't directly help Noah level up, probably because of the development ability. For example, there were multiple development abilities for Noah to choose from. It seems that you've already guessed it. Then I'll get straight to the point. Hestia didn't beat around the bush and directly said to Noah. Currently, there are 3 development abilities for you to choose from. 3? Noah curiously asked. Which 3? The first one is the Hunter ability, which is used to deal with monsters. It's a type of ability that can only be obtained by defeating a large number of monsters in a short period of time. It's quite difficult to obtain. Hestia said. This ability can strengthen the ability of the user when they encounter monsters of the same type that they have fought and gained experience points from. It's very suitable for raiding dungeons. It's a very valuable ability. As long as the adventurer's goal is to raid dungeons, they would want to obtain this ability the most. The second one is the Magician ability, which is used for magic. Only Only those who are good at magic and have a good grasp of magic can learn this ability. Hestia looked at Noah with a strange expression. This ability can strengthen the power of magic, expand the area of effect, increase the efficiency of mental strength, magic power, and so on. Only with this ability can one be called a high-level magus. Those who haven't learned magic and those who use magic half-heartedly have no way of obtaining this development ability as a choice for leveling up. Hearing this, Noah immediately laughed. Hestia looked at Noah with a strange expression. Undoubtedly, Noah's 3 magic options were still empty. How could he obtain the magician ability as a choice? But Noah did have a good grasp of magic, and his mastery of it was very high. Although it was just enhance and magic canon, which were relatively basic magic in the world of Type Moon. Noah, who didn't mention this matter, could only change the topic. Then, what about the last one? The last one is called mystery. Hestia's expression became serious. To be honest, I really didn't think that you could obtain this ability, Noah, but I suggest you choose this one. Why? Noah asked curiously. Is this ability special? Of course it's special, Hestia said. In the whole of Eulalia, there are less than 5 people who have this ability. Don't you think it's special? Less than 5 people? Noah's curiosity was piqued. What kind of effect does this ability have? To put it simply, this development ability is like a miracle that we gods are best at, right? Hasti said. If the person who obtains this ability is a blacksmith, then he or she may be able to create weapons that are more precious than magic swords. If the person who obtains this ability is an apothecary, then he or she may be able to create elixirs that can bring people back from the dead. A long time ago, there was even a person with this ability who created a legendary item that could make people immortal. In the eyes of us gods, this ability is already related to the domain of gods. Noah raised an eyebrow. If this was really the case, then this ability was indeed very special. People with this ability will even attract the attention of the gods. If the news of you having this ability spreads out, I don't think there will be a single god who won't try to steal you from me, right? Hasti tried to persuade him. So, if you don't choose this ability, then it's really a waste. Just choose this one. Chapter 863. Mystery. It was a development ability that could bring about miraculous powers. In Eulalia, which was the center of the world, there were less than 5 people who had this development ability. It was easy to imagine how precious this development ability was. Moreover, this was an ability that even the gods said had touched upon their domain. If one wasn't a fool, then they would generally choose this development ability. Noah also fell into deep thought. To be honest, Noah was also more inclined to choose mystery. After all, although the other 2 development abilities could play a very good role, but for Noah, they wouldn't be of much use. For example, Hunter, although this ability could strengthen the user's ability to a certain extent when facing monsters that they had previously fought and won, causing many adventurers to be very inclined to choose this ability, but Noah wasn't a standard adventurer. He couldn't always go into dungeons and kill monsters, he couldn't even stay in this world forever. Moreover, although it was said that it could strengthen one's ability, there was no clear indicator of how much it could strengthen one's ability. Therefore, for Noah, this ability could be considered dispensable. Then there was the development ability of Magicite. This development ability was more suitable for Noah than Hunter. Since the magic ability could strengthen Noah's magic and magic, then this development ability that could strengthen various kinds of magic should also have an effect on Noah's magic and magic. However, Noah's real strength wasn't magic and magic, but authority and Gate of Babylon. If authority was compared to a peerless divine ability, then Gate of Babylon was Noah's divine weapon. Not only did he have a peerless divine ability, but he also had a divine weapon. In the end, where Noah was strong, it was clear at a glance. Therefore, if mystery didn't appear, then perhaps Noah would have chosen magicite. Now, the development ability of mystery was more attractive to Noah. It was really hard to say what the so-called miraculous ability was. Therefore, rather than choosing the development ability of magician to strengthen his secondary magic and spells, Noah would rather choose the slightly more suspenseful mystery. Although a God Slayer had a miraculous ability to activate God, he didn't know what it was. Noah looked at Hestia, who was patiently waiting for him to make a decision, and said, "Don't worry, I'm not going to do it. Then I'll choose mystery." Hearing Noah's choice, a smile blossomed on Hestia's cute little face. Seeing this, Noah couldn't help but mutter in his heart. Was Hestia also a god? For these gods who were so bored that they came to the lower realm to find excitement, and even forbade the use of their divine power, there was nothing more interesting than novelty. Therefore, once an adventurer had a rare skill or ability, it would definitely attract the interest of these gods, and it was possible to turn the world upside down. Hestia wasn't as bored as those gods, but in the end, she also came to the lower realm because the heavens were too boring. Seeing that Noah had an extremely rare ability to choose from, she hoped that Noah would choose it, right? Of course, Hestia was already considered good, at least she would respect Noah's choice. As for the other gods, they would not hesitate to extract the mystery ability the moment it appeared, and make decisions for the people of the spawn without permission. Then I'll help you upgrade it now. Hestia took out a sharp needle again, pricked her finger, and dripped her divine blood on Noah's back. While helping Noah to upgrade his ability value, she said so. "Oh, Noah, you're a god. You're a god. By the way, you should already know that after upgrading your ability, your basic ability will return to 0, right?" Noah nodded with his back facing Hestia. Yes. After upgrading, no matter who it was, the basic ability part of the ability value would be reset to 0, and they would continue to hone it from the initialized stage. However, that didn't mean that the power obtained at LV1 would disappear. Although the basic ability would return to 0, the basic ability of the upper level did not disappear, but remained as a hidden ability. Even if it couldn't be seen in the ability value, it did exist. Therefore, after upgrading, Noah's basic ability would all return to 0, but the actual enhancement would only be stronger than before the upgrade. Generally, it could be understood that the ability after upgrading was a few % increase in the basic ability of the upper level. For example, if Noah's strength at LV1 was calculated as 100, and the increase during the upgrade was calculated as 50%. Then, when Noah upgraded to LV2, his strength was 150. Therefore, it was normal for the basic ability value to be reset to 0 after the upgrade. However, Hestia suddenly said this. "It's just that your situation is special." Special? Noah was startled. "What do you mean?" "It means that the EXP you have accumulated in the past half-month has exceeded the amount needed for the upgrade. Even if the EXP needed for the upgrade is consumed, you can still use the remaining EXP to improve your basic ability." Hestia sighed. "So, after the upgrade, your basic ability should not be in the initial stage, and it should be improved, right?" After that, Hestia also completed the final update. After pressing the blue light blooming from Noah's back and the mysterious dark text on Noah's back, she copied the translation of the ability value on a new record paper and gave it to Noah. "In a month, not only did you break through the upper limit of the ability value several times, but you can continue to improve your basic ability after the upgrade. You are really a freak." Noah didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he took the paper from Hestia's hand and checked his current ability value. Noah Doria LV 2 Power, SSS, 2000, S, 967, Durability, SSS, 2000, S, 976, Dexterity, SSS, 2000, S, 971, Agility, SSS, 2000, S, 988, Magic, SSS, 2000, S, 954, Mystery, Magic, Skill Frowny Face Protection from the World, a permanent skill. It was equivalent to luck. Events that were directly related to luck would eventually lead to the most favorable result. Development ability was the same as basic ability, it was also divided into high and low levels. Just like basic ability, the strength of development ability was also divided into 10 stages, S, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and I. However, there was no such thing as proficiency in development ability. When one could upgrade to the next stage completely depended on the EXP accumulated. Those who obtained the forging ability could upgrade themselves by continuously forging weapons and defensive equipment. People who obtained the harmony development ability could upgrade by constantly concocting elixirs and recovery potions. Naturally, Noah, who obtained the mystery, could only upgrade by constantly using this ability. All-around ability value S stage. Noah smiled. I didn't waste my time in the dungeon. Well, the stronger you are, the more proud I am to be your main god. Hestia stood up from the sofa and pretended to be mature as she patted Noah's head with a gratified look, but the words that came out of her mouth were like this. If Loki, who originally wanted to poach you, knew about your growth, he would definitely beat his chest and stamp his feet. How about I go and show off in front of him next time? Noah immediately rolled his eyes. These so-called gods, they were really trying to find ways to seek stimulation all day long. At this time, the door was opened. Baal, who was holding various bags in his hands, walked in with difficulty from the outside and looked at Noah and Hestia with tears in his eyes. Leader, great god, please help me. Seeing this, Noah and Hestia looked at each other and couldn't help but laugh. Okay. Hestia shouted with vigor. I'm going to enjoy myself today. Hestia said as she pulled Noah's hand and pulled the helpless Noah up. Today was destined to be a warm day. Chapter 864. Early in the morning, traces of cold air still permeated the air, making the temperature of the morning seem more or less low. However, because of the dungeon, Eulalia was never really deserted. That was why this city was known as the busiest city in the world, and also the center of the world. Under such circumstances, many adventurers had woken up early and were fully armed. Some teamed up with each other, while others carried huge backpacks. They started walking towards the Tower of Babel. Surprisingly, Noah was also among the crowd. Besides Noah, there was another person. That was Baal, who had just joined Hestia's clan and was considered Noah's junior. At this moment, Baal was walking a distance behind Noah as though he wanted to show that his status was lower than Noah's. While following behind Noah, he was looking at the fully armored adventurers around him with a pair of red eyes with curiosity written all over his face. Everyone, as expected, you all have good equipment. Noah heard a trace of envy in Baal's voice. However, there was no covetous desire. Baal had just become an adventurer. Although he had entered the dungeon, he was still wandering around the 1st to 4th levels. The 1st to 4th levels of the dungeon could be said to be the true beginner's area. The monsters that appeared were mainly the lowest type of goblins, and there were not many types. As the top few levels of the dungeon, the 1st to 4th levels were naturally easier for beginner adventurers to conquer. As long as one was not surrounded by multiple monsters, there was basically no possibility of losing one's life. It was generally believed that LV1 adventurers could conquer the 1st to 12th levels of the dungeon. Based on the strength and frequency of appearance of the monsters on each floor, if the basic ability was used as an evaluation, it could be roughly distinguished like this. Floors 1 to 4 were the floors where one's basic ability had reached stage I and stage H. The 5th to 7th levels were safe for those with Stage G and Stage F abilities. The 8th to 10th floors were safe for adventurers whose basic abilities had reached E, D, and C levels. On the other hand, the 11th to 12th floors were the floors that adventurers of the B, A, and S stages could attack. In other words, Bale, who was wandering around the 1st to 4th levels, was at Stage I to Stage H. He was a complete beginner. Therefore, Bale's weapons and armor were the most basic items bought from the guild. They were the ones with the lowest damage and defense. As a 14-year-old boy, he was naturally envious of the good equipment of others. However, Bale was able to handle this envy well. Before long, Bale had retracted his gaze from the surrounding pedestrians and looked at Noah. Leader, how deep into the dungeon are we going today? Bale said that he had not learned any combat skills and was just an ordinary village boy. As the leader, Noah had to teach him the most basic combat skills. Therefore, today, Noah was mainly here to bring Bale along. Today's plan is to teach you the most basic combat skills, Noah replied without turning his head. Therefore, we don't have to go very deep. Just stay on the 1st to 4th levels. What? Bale was surprised. But the great god said that you're a LV2 advanced adventurer. Even if you bring me to the lower levels, I'll be fine. That's true, but if you just want to learn how to fight, there's no need to specifically pick the stronger monsters on the lower floors, right? Noah glanced at Belle and asked curiously. What's wrong? Do you want to go to the lower levels? That. Bale scratched his head shyly. Yes, a little, oh. Noah was even more curious. Why do you want to go to the lower levels? When Noah uttered these words, Belle straightened his back at once as his eyes sparkled and he uttered, That's right, that's right. That's right. That's right. I want to find a chance encounter in the dungeon. What? Noah almost couldn't believe his ears. What did you say? He. Bale said shyly. Because I've been looking forward to the fateful encounter between the protagonist and the heroine in the story. Therefore, I want to do it once, there. Noah looked as though he had swallowed a fly. He was speechless. You became an adventurer because of this. Yes. Bale said excitedly. When my grandfather was alive, he always told me that it's a man's romance to meet a beautiful girl in the dungeon. He also said that a man should have a harem. That's why I came to the dungeon. Is that so? Noah laughed dryly and looked away from Bale as if he couldn't bear to look at him. Then I wish you success, yes. Bale seemed to take Noah's words as encouragement and became more excited. I'll do my best. Noah could only look at Bale as though he was looking at an immature child. He led the excited Bale into the dungeon. About half an hour later, Bale's excitement had completely disappeared and turned into despair. Roar! Amidst an orderly beastly roar, approximately 10 humanoid wolf-like monsters as tall as a human brandished their sharp claws that flickered with arcs of light, viciously pouncing towards a figure in front of them. Ah! The white-haired, red-eyed, rabbit-like youth who was being targeted by the pack of lycanthropes held a short knife, but his entire body was trembling. Facing the pack of lycanthropes that pounced on him, he let out a miserable cry and turned around to flee without hesitation. Why are there so many monsters on the first level? At the beginning, all adventurers had to pass through this level. The monsters on the first level rarely gathered in groups. At most, there would be 4 or 5 of them. But now, Bale was facing a group of monsters. He was being chased by more than 10 wolf-like monsters. Frankly speaking, with Bale's current ability, not to mention 10 wolf-like monsters, even one would be difficult for him. Therefore, Bale was so scared that tears almost came out of his eyes. Without any hesitation, he ran back. Noah said helplessly at a place not far from Bale. Why are you running? Attack them. Attack them. Bale shook his head as he ran. I can't. Leader. I can't. Don't say you can't as a man. Noah almost face-bombed. Although your ability is still low, if you have a certain level of skill, it won't be difficult to defeat 10 monsters on the first level. Very difficult. Very difficult. Bale cried out with tears streaming down his face. None of the monsters there are weaker than me. How can I defeat 10 at once? Hearing this, Noah sighed heavily and stopped talking. He looked around and picked up a few small stones from the ground. At the same time, a wolf-like monster pounced on Bale's back. Bale, who happened to turn around and see this scene, was scared out of his wits. Sensing the fishy smell from the saliva dripping from the Lycan's big mouth, his face turned ashen. Shio! Just at this moment, a small stone shot out like an arrow from a bow, fiercely shooting towards them. The stone didn't hit the wolf-like monster. Instead, it was aimed at Bale. Bang! With a muffled thud, Bale felt his knee being hit by something. Although it didn't hurt, he lost the strength to support himself and fell to the ground. Who? Just as Bale's knees gave way and he was about to kneel down, the werewolf pounced on top of Bale, who was half kneeling. Shio! Immediately, the second stone shot out and landed on the joint of Bale's hand that was holding the dagger. Bang! There was another muffled sound. Bale, who was hit by the pebble on his arm, did not even have time to react. His hand involuntarily swung out. Poochie! In the next second, the dagger in Bale's hand flashed across the wolf-like monster's neck and cut open its windpipe. The wolf-like monster's roar stopped abruptly. Blood dripped down onto Bale's lifeless face. Chapter 865. Pang! With a muffled sound, the Lycan whose throat was slit by Bale's dagger directly fell to the ground. Its body exploded and turned into ashes, leaving behind a very small magic stone, only the size of a fingernail, that fell to the ground. Bale, whose face was still dripping with Lycan blood, seemed to be completely unable to believe everything in front of his eyes. He stood there in a daze, not even moving an inch. Roar! At this moment, the other Lycans also pounced one after another. Standing in the distance, Noah gazed at the Lycans madly pouncing on Bale's body. Compared to Bale, who was foolishly looking at the ashes scattered on the ground, he weighed a few small stones in his hand and raised them high above his shoulder. With a mysterious force, he threw the small stones one after another. With the sound of the small stones piercing through the air, almost every joint of Bale's thin and weak body was hit. Bale's body was completely in a state of not being controlled by him, but it was extremely nimble. Like a puppet pulled by an invisible string, Bale's body was stiff as he jumped up and down, avoiding the bite of the Lycans. At the same time, Bale's hand that was tightly holding the dagger was also uncontrollably swinging the small stones one after another. Sometimes it was swung towards the Lycan's neck, and sometimes it was swung towards the Lycan's chest. Under the rays of cold light, it brought out patches of blood. That was the blood of the Lycan's body that was cleanly cut open. In less than 3 minutes. In less than 3 minutes, Bale was stunned for not a second in a state of consciousness. His whole body seemed to have become not his own. When he stopped, his surroundings were already full of the Lycans that were chasing him fiercely just now. Pang 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 pang. In a series of muffled sounds, the Lycans lying on the ground all turned into ashes, only leaving behind small magic stones. Looking at this scene, Bale was completely stunned. How is it? Noah, who was weighing the small stones in his hand, said with a smile that was not a smile. Now, can you still say that you are not a match for these monsters? The same body. The same ability value. Falling into Baal's control would only result in him running away pathetically. However, under Noah's control, he was able to take care of all of them effortlessly in less than 3 minutes. Moreover, he did not even let those monsters touch him. In addition, Noah had used pebbles to hit Baal's body and made him act according to his own thoughts without causing him any pain or injury. When Baal came back to his senses, he found that he could no longer hide his admiration for Noah. "Guild leader, you're so amazing, is that so?" Facing Baal's admiring gaze, Noah said faintly. "Then, do you want to become so powerful?" Baal nodded his head like he was pounding garlic. There was almost no hesitation during the entire process. In response, Noah simply said, "Then, you should have remembered all the movements just now, right?" Baal held his breath. The action just now. It was probably the same movements he used when fighting the Leakin under Noah's control, right? Baal lowered his head in embarrassment. Because there was no reaction, I didn't remember clearly. "I'm sorry, since you didn't remember clearly, let's continue." Noah weighed the pebbles in his hand and smiled. "Don't worry, even if you don't remember clearly, I'll make your body remember how to fight. Be prepared." At this moment, Baal felt a chill running down his spine. It was almost noon when Noah and Baal reappeared at the entrance of the Tower of Babel. However, the two of them were in completely different states. Noah was still as calm as when he entered the dungeon. Even his clothes were not stained with dust. It was as if he had just taken a stroll in the dungeon. His posture was still so otherworldly. Baal, on the other hand, looked like he had been severely drilled. His shoulders drooped, and he swayed his arms weakly like a corpse as he staggered out of the dungeon. The two of them formed a sharp contrast and attracted the attention of many people around them. Ignoring the surrounding gazes, Noah glanced at the staggering Baal and did not know whether to laugh or cry. "That's enough. Didn't you just train for the whole morning? Do you really need to be like this?" "Woo," Baal said in an aggrieved tone, as if he was a child who had been bullied. "But, I'm really tired, so, didn't we come up for a break?" Noah rolled his eyes and sighed. "It seems that before your body is completely used to fighting, I'll have to teach you the breathing technique. Otherwise, your small body won't be able to withstand much training, right?" The main reason why Noah was able to train day and night without feeling tired was because of the breathing technique that allowed him to quickly recover his physical strength. Otherwise, even Noah wouldn't have been able to let his body withstand that level of continuous tempering. It could be said that Noah's breathing technique played a great role in training. Breathing technique. Baal raised his head with difficulty and looked at Noah strangely and tiredly. "Well, what's breathing technique?" "Well, you'll know soon enough." Noah waved his hand. "Now, let's go to the top of the Tower of Babel." The top of the Tower of Babel. Baal raised his head subconsciously and looked at the ceiling of the hall on the first floor of the Tower of Babel. He asked suspiciously, "Why do we have to go to the top of the Tower of Babel? Don't you know?" Noah shrugged. Although the Tower of Babel is mainly used as a cover for the dungeon, the upper floors of this building, which belongs to the guild, have other uses. Other uses? Baal blinked his eyes. As you can see, the first floor of the Tower of Babel is a place where adventurers who intend to enter the dungeon have to enter. The second floor is a public facility of the guild. There is a shower room, which provides various services for adventurers. The third floor is a money exchange center. If you find it troublesome to exchange money at the guild headquarters, you can also exchange magic stones and dropped items for money on the third floor. But there are many people, so you have to queue up. Noah raised a finger and pointed upwards. The fourth floor of the Tower of Babel and above is used as a storefront for the commercial clan members to sell weapons, armor, elixirs, and props. Baal, even if you're new here, you should have heard of the clan members of Hephaestus, right? The 4th floor to the 8th floor of the Tower of Babel are the shops of the clan members of Hephaestus. All of them. Bale was stunned. As for the area above the storefront floor, it is a place provided by the guild for the main gods of the spawns, who are second to none in Eulalia, to live. Noah lifted his head and looked at the ceiling as though he could see the main gods through the ceiling. He sneered. You have to be careful. Even if there is no reason, they may target you. Bale's expression suddenly became confused. Well, just take it seriously. Noah withdrew his gaze and spread out his hands. Anyway, let's go upstairs. But, aren't the shops of the clan members of Hephaestus? Bale shrunk his head. Why are we going there? Isn't that obvious? Noah smiled indifferently. Of course, we're going to get you a set of decent equipment. Bale was stunned and immediately screamed. With this shout, the surrounding adventurers all cast strange and ferocious gazes at them. Noah slapped Bale's head. What the hell are you screaming for? But leader. I heard that the equipment of the clan members of Hephaestus is unimaginably expensive. Bale panicked. Are we really going there to buy equipment? Since I said so, I won't joke with you. Noah rolled his eyes. Anyway, you have to get a set of decent equipment. If you always wear the standard equipment given by the guild, you're telling everyone that you're a rookie. Don't tell me you can stand it. After that, Noah grabbed Bale's collar and dragged the helpless Bale forward. Chapter 866. Wow. Although Bale was extremely reluctant to come, when he arrived on the 4th floor of the Tower of Babel, he was still conquered by the scene in front of him. What presented in front of him was an environment that was like a luxurious palace corridor. However, around such an environment, there were rows of beautifully decorated shops. On the plaque of these shops, there was a mark such as Phi Alpha Iota Sigma Tau Omicron C, which told others who these shops belonged to. They really are all shops of Hephaestus's spawn. Bale looked around with some amazement, but when he saw the price of the excellent equipment displayed in the glass windows outside the shops, his face immediately stiffened. It couldn't be helped. Not to mention a newbie like Bell, even the LV3 and LV4 adventurers who were known as level 2 adventurers would be shocked by the price tags on the equipment displayed in the glass windows, right? If one were to describe it in one sentence, it would be that almost all of the equipment here were extremely precious and valuable, and were worth millions of RMB. As mentioned before, adventurers were divided into superior adventurers and inferior adventurers. Among them, the superior adventurers referred to the senior adventurers who had reached LV2. The adventurers who had reached LV2 would be crowned as the third-level adventurers. The adventurers who had reached LV3 and LV4 would be crowned as the second-level adventurers. The adventurers who had reached LV5 would be crowned as the first-level adventurers. Not to mention those inferior equipment, the equipment in this world was also divided into first level, second level, and third level, which corresponded to the first level adventurers, the second level adventurers, and the third level adventurers respectively. These graded equipment were all excellent equipment that could only be made by senior blacksmiths who had learned the development ability of forging. In addition to their own sharpness and precision, they would also be endowed with various strange effects, such as increasing lethality, enhancing durability, and even increasing ability value. There was a limit to these effects. Therefore, the price of the graded equipment was simply a world of difference from the price of the inferior equipment. The equipment displayed here were all at least of the third level of good equipment. Naturally, the price would not be lower. Bale even saw a level 1 weapon that was worth 30 million Varus. He shook his head desperately and looked at Noah with a trembling face, his voice carrying a hint of pleading. Leader, let's not buy equipment here. It's too expensive, and I can't afford it. Moreover, I'm only at LV1 now, how can I equip the equipment of the superior adventurers? I know, if the equipment is too powerful and you become dependent on it, it will be very disadvantageous to your growth, Noah replied almost in an almost indifferent manner. That's why I won't give you a full set of armor that can be worn by high-level adventurers. The armor will be suitable for you. As for weapons, I feel that it's better to give you a passable one. That way, you'll be able to deal with many dangers in the dungeon. Weapons. Bell couldn't help but look at a dagger displayed in the window of a shop closest to him. He stared at the 8 million yen sign on it and shook his head fiercely. Still won't do. Even if it was just a weapon. I can't afford it. Noah laughed bitterly when he saw the price of the dagger that Bale was looking at. Don't worry, I won't give you a level 1 weapon that can be used by a level 1 adventurer. I intend to give you a level 3 weapon. A tier 3 weapon. Bale's expression relaxed a little, but he was still a little depressed. Is that really okay? Since I said it's okay, don't be so wishy-washy. Noah ignored Bale and went into a nearby shop. If you don't want to come in, I'll help you choose. What? Bale panicked and looked to his left and right. He didn't dare to stay in the high-end shopping street alone, so he followed Noah into the shop. Just as Noah and Bale entered the shop, a female shop assistant wearing a staff uniform greeted them with a businesslike smile. Welcome, 2 guests. Hi. Hello. Bale nervously returned the greeting, which confused the shop assistant. Fortunately, Noah was there, so it wouldn't be a joke. Excuse me, Noah said to the shop assistant. We'd like to take a look at the equipment. Okay. The shop assistant immediately welcomed Noah with an even brighter smile. Excuse me, are you looking for weapons or armor? Weapons, Noah said directly. Do you have a dagger? Bring us over to have a look. Okay. The shop assistant warmly welcomed Noah. This way, please. Under the shop assistant's lead, Noah and Bale, who had been looking around nervously, came to a corner. There was a glass cabinet here. Inside the cabinet, a number of well-made daggers were neatly arranged, with a price tag hanging in front of them. There was a level 1 weapon that cost a few million Varus. There was a level 2 weapon that cost more than 1 million. There was also a level 3 weapon that cost less than 1 million. These were the daggers that Bale was accustomed to using. You choose. Noah stroked his chin and let Bale choose. Just choose what you like. Bale's face was full of uneasiness, and he instinctively wanted to decline, but Noah looked at him urgently. Bale, modesty is a good thing, but being indecisive is definitely not a good thing. Noah glanced at Bale. Instead of rejecting it, I hope that you can accept it. If you feel that it's not good to accept such a valuable item, then use this weapon to save your life in the dungeon. You can earn tens, hundreds, or even tens of times more money than this. This sentence was like a sharp sword that pierced Bale's heart, dispelling his last bit of hesitation. I understand. Bale swallowed his saliva and extended his finger to touch one of the daggers. I'll take this one. Bale chose a simple-looking dagger. The blade was bright silver, and the handle was black. The entire dagger had a strange luster. It was indeed a level 3 weapon. The price tag clearly stated that it was 700,000 yen. This price was quite high for a level 3 weapon. Noah smiled and looked at the shop assistant. Then, we'll take this one. After coming out of the Tower of Babel, Bale's equipment had been completely changed. He was no longer wearing the standard armor that only had the most basic defensive function. Instead, he was wearing a steel-colored, or perhaps pure silver-colored armor. He had a breastplate, knee guards, gauntlets, shoulder guards, and other light armor that could only protect his elbows, wrists, and waist. In addition, the dagger, which was rated as a level 3 weapon, was also attached to his back. If Baal was a rookie when he first entered the Tower of Babel, then he looked like a professional adventurer at this moment. With a level 3 weapon and this set of equipment, as long as you don't rush blindly, you will be able to survive in the dungeon even if you are exploring alone. Noah scratched his cheek as he advised Linley, don't rush blindly. Even if you want to meet a girl, you have to think about whether you can survive. Yes. Baal felt a sense of responsibility due to his expensive equipment. He finally stopped fooling around in the dungeon and showed a serious expression for the first time. I'll work hard. This sentence was exactly the same as what Baal had said in the morning when he came over with Noah. However, this time, Baal's words were rather forceful, causing the corners of Noah's lips to curl up slowly. Well, it's almost time to rest. Noah looked at the sky. Let's continue into the dungeon. Yes. Baal answered firmly. However, the next moment, a delicate and tender voice stopped Noah and Baal, who were about to move to the entrance of the dungeon. Wait. Handsome brother and white-haired brother over there. Chapter 867. Wait. The handsome guy and the white-haired guy over there. Noah and Baal, who were about to go to the dungeon, stopped when they heard the voice. There was no other reason. Although they did not know whether the handsome guy referred to Noah, the white-haired guy must be Baal. After all, Baal's hair color was very rare here. At least, in this world, Noah had only seen Baal's hair color. Noah and Baal turned their heads and looked behind them. At this time, Noah and Baal were in the hall on the first floor of the Tower of Babel. Noah and Baal saw the adventurers and supporters coming and going, but none of them stopped or looked at Noah and Baal. Obviously, they did not stop Noah and Baal. Then, that delicate and tender voice rang out once again. Brothers, I'm down there. Hearing that, Noah and Baal looked down at the same time and finally saw the owner of the voice. It was a little girl who was about 1 meter tall. She was wearing a loose cream-colored robe with a hood and carrying a backpack that was several times bigger than her body. Looking at how petite her body was, if she wasn't an 11 or 12-year-old girl, then she was probably a small human, right? Logically speaking, it was impossible for an 11 or 12-year-old girl to come to the Tower of Babel with such a big backpack. Therefore, Noah and Baal immediately treated each other as the hominid tribe. On the other hand, not only did the young lady who looked like a dwarf wrap herself tightly in a loose robe, but she also wore a hood. Only her chestnut-colored hair and cute little face could be vaguely seen. Her round eyes stared straight at Noah and Baal with a sweet, fawning smile on her face. Although it's very sudden, brothers, do you need help? Help. Baal was confused. It was not that he did not know what help was, but because it was too sudden, he did not know how to react. Supporters. Noah wasn't as confused as Baal. He raised his eyebrows and looked at the petite girl in front of him, but he didn't say anything. The reason was simple. That was because the petite girl wasn't looking at Noah at all. She was only looking at the confused Baal. No. Rather than looking at Baal, it would be more accurate to say that he was looking at the equipment on Baal's body, as well as the dagger protruding from his waist. Moreover, Noah, who was good at reading people's body language, could vaguely sense it. Although the girl in front of him was smiling sweetly like a flower, not only was her smile too fake, there wasn't even a trace of emotion in her cute eyes. It was like facing Noah and Baal was just a part of his job, a part of his daily routine. This made Noah choose to keep his mouth shut. He just looked at the petite girl and didn't say anything. However, just because Noah didn't speak didn't mean that others wouldn't let him speak. That. Baal snapped out of his daze and looked at Noah for help. Leader, what should we do in this situation? It was obvious that Baal, who had a timid personality, could not handle such a sudden situation. Leader. The petite girl was stunned by Bale's words. Then, the way she looked at Noah changed. It was as if she just realized that she couldn't ignore Noah, but the smile on her face didn't change. This is so rude. So this handsome brother is the leader of the team. It's Lily's negligence. It was no wonder the girl thought so. After all, compared to the fully armed Bale, Noah was only in casual clothes and didn't even carry any weapons. It was easier for others to think that he was an adventurer. Naturally, they wouldn't think that Noah was the leader of the adventurers exploring the dungeon. Then, handsome brother, may I ask if your team needs support? The girl smiled innocently. Her round eyes hidden under the hood and bangs were also exposed as she stared at Noah. Don't be fooled by Lily's appearance. In the line of support, Lily is quite capable. If possible, can Lily join your team? Oh. Noah looked at the young girl who had been calling herself Lily and asked. In other words, you intend to be a support for our team, so you came to us? Yes. The girl who called herself Lily nodded. Because the handsome brother and the white-haired brother didn't carry any backpacks, Lily thought that the two of you didn't have support in your team. May I ask if Lily is wrong? No, this isn't wrong. We are indeed not support, and there is no support in our team. Noah shrugged. But if you intend to join our team, you have found the wrong team. Ha! Lily exclaimed in surprise. Why? Don't the two of you intend to let the support help? When exploring the dungeon, the presence of a support was very necessary. If an adventurer had to kill enemies, pick up dropped items, and carry a heavy backpack on his back, he would be greatly restricted. For example, when killing enemies, the backpack would be a hindrance or even a burden. Another example would be to personally pick up the dropped items after killing monsters, and the time would be wasted. If the adventurer used this time to continue exploring the dungeon, the rewards would increase, and the efficiency would increase. Therefore, without a support, the adventurer's exploration speed would be greatly reduced, and it would become a troublesome burden. The rewards would also be greatly reduced. In this way, everyone would want to have a supporter in their team. It was a pity that Noah didn't need a support. After all, Noah had a huge storage space that could be used to retrieve various items. Most importantly, Noah and Bale weren't there to explore the dungeon. Instead, they were there to let Bale, who was a novice adventurer, learn some combat skills. Since they weren't there to explore the dungeon, they naturally didn't need a support to retrieve items. Therefore, Noah said, "Apologies. We're only going to find some monsters in the dungeon to train our skills. We won't be serious about conquering the dungeon. Even if you find us, we don't really need a support." Lily's smiling face froze. Needless to say, Lily must not have thought that Noah and Bale's purpose was actually this. Just when Noah thought that Lily was going to give up, he didn't expect Lily's expression to return to normal as she said with a smile. Even if it's for training, there will be times when the two of you will defeat monsters. Then, Lily will be of use. So, please, let Lily join your team. After saying that, Lily looked at Noah expectantly. She looked like she really wanted to join Noah and Bale's team. We're only going to explore levels 1 to 4. The magic stones and dropped items aren't worth much. Noah folded his arms. Even so, you intend to join us. Levels 1 to 4. Lily lowered her head slightly. When she lifted her head again, her face was full of smiles. It's all right. Anyway, Lily won't be able to find other adventurers to take me in. Even if I earn a little, it's better than nothing. That's what people say. Noah shrugged at Bale. Bale, what do you think? Leader, you can make the decision, Bale said hurriedly. I don't have any objections. Then it's all right. Noah lowered his head and stared at the petite girl named Lily. His dark and deep eyes flickered slightly, and there was a hint of a smile that wasn't a smile flashing past. "If you think it doesn't matter, then come with me." Lily felt that the pair of dark eyes gazing at her seemed to be able to see through her. She couldn't help but shudder. But even so, the petite young lady named Lily was still smiling stiffly. "Thank you very much." The girl's gaze shifted to Bale's direction. Her gaze landed on the short sword on Bale's back, and she retracted her gaze. Seeing this scene, Noah curled his lips and smiled. "Looks like I won't be bored today." Chapter 868. Dungeon, Level 4, Haw. Roar. In a tunnel with little light, the fully armed Belle wielded a short knife that flashed with a bright silver luster. He was entangled with a Leakin that was much taller than him, exchanging blows back and forth in a battle. Bale's movements were a little messy, but he was gradually becoming more proficient. This was because, while Bale was entangled with the Leakin, small pebbles would be shot out from behind him in a fluster. The pebbles would ruthlessly smash into the joints of Bale's frail body, causing Bale's body to naturally move. Over time, as Bale's movements became more and more proficient, the number of pebbles that were shot at him slowly decreased. In the end, there was not even a pebble left. Thanks to this, although Bale's movements were becoming more and more proficient, if he encountered some attacks, the small pebbles would no longer help him dodge, causing Bale to frequently be struck by the sharp claws and fangs of the Leakin. If it wasn't for the fact that Bale was no longer wearing the lowest grade equipment from the guild, he would have suffered quite a few injuries. However, this was what Noah should be doing. Noah's goal was to let Bale master certain battle techniques, not to constantly help Bale defeat monsters. If he had to constantly take care of Bale, then when Bale entered the dungeon by himself, could he still rely on Noah's help? That was definitely not possible. Hence, as Bale gradually grasped battle techniques, Noah did not intend to help him anymore. He wanted to let Bale get used to fighting monsters. Only actual combat was the fastest way to improve. Of course, even though there was no practical help, Noah continued to point out Bale's flaws in battle. Don't always retreat when you hear the monsters roar. That's just to scare people. When it's time to attack, attack. Yes. You don't have to constantly attack the monster's body. You can target its weak points, such as its eyes, throat, or mouth. That way, you can kill it in one hit. You can also attack its limbs. That way, the threat of the monster will be greatly reduced. Yes. You have to learn how to make use of all your advantages. Don't just block and dodge the monster's attacks. Don't forget, you still have armor on you. That werewolf alone won't be able to break through your armor. You can take the attack, then seize the opportunity to finish off your opponent in one strike. Yes. Your dexterity is higher than the monster's, but you don't have to show off your speed every time. Since you've dodged the monster's attack, you can stop now. Don't go overboard. Yes. Thus, it didn't take long for Noah to find fault with him to decrease the number of times. Looking at Bale, who was fighting back and forth with the Leakin, Noah weighed the remaining pebbles in his hand and smiled. His progress is quite fast. That kid has a bright future ahead of him. Hearing Noah's words, Lily, who was carrying a large backpack, stood at the side. She glanced at Noah from time to time, and there was a faint shock in her eyes. Noah's guidance aside, Noah's amazing skill in throwing pebbles to let Bale act according to his own ideas really shocked Lily. At least, Lily had seen many great adventurers, but none of them could do the same thing as Noah. Lily couldn't help but ask hesitantly. "That, Sir Noah, are you also a LV1 adventurer?" "Not long ago." Noah didn't look back and responded with an indifferent attitude. "However, I've been upgraded recently. Now I'm LV2. Is that so?" Lily smiled. Sir Noah is really amazing." Although she said that, in her heart, Lily was even more shocked than before. Lily had seen a lot of LV2 adventurers. However, let alone LV2, even LV3 or LV4 don't have Noah's skills, right? A LV2 can have such skills. Who on earth was this person? Then again. Lily pretended to ask casually. "Which clan do Sir Noah and Sir Baal belong to?" "We are members of Hestia's clan. Currently, there are only 2 people in the clan, Baal and I." Noah glanced at Lily and said. "So, which clan does Miss Supporter belong to?" "Yes, Sir Noah." Lily lowered her head and let her expression be covered by her hoodie and bangs. Lily is a member of Sumo's clan. Hearing Lily's words, Noah stopped weighing pebbles. Today, Noah was no longer the outsider who had just arrived in this world and didn't know anything. Although Noah, who knew the importance of information, went into the underground city every day, he still collected all kinds of information in disguise. And the mainstream of this world was the various family clans established by the gods. Of course, the information collected by Noah was generally the most about each clan. Among them, Noah had more or less grasped some information about the Sumo's clan. This Sumo's clan was a typical exploration-type clan. Almost every member of it was an adventurer who often mingled in the underground city. However, this clan tribe was also handling some commercial activities. Noah heard that the people of this clan would take out some wine to sell in the market from time to time. Although there were not many varieties in circulation in the market, it was said that the taste was impeccable and was one of the most sought-after goods in Eulalia. As for the scale of Sumo's clan, it could almost be said to be extremely outstanding in Eulalia, and its strength was the backbone of the backbone. There were no particularly outstanding strong people, not even a level 1 adventurer, but the number of members of Sumo's clan could almost be regarded as the largest in all of Eulalia. However, the main god of this clan, that is, the god named Sumo, was a little strange. It was said that Sumo had never attended any occasions so far, and even did not communicate with other gods at all. He was very reclusive. Noah still remembered that when he asked Hestia about Sumo, there was a moment when Hestia could not think of the name Sumo. It was conceivable how faint Sumo's presence was. "Since you have a clan, why do you want to team up with us who are different from you?" Noah turned his head and looked directly at Lily. "Compared to us who are likely to have conflicts because of different clans, you can team up with your companions in the clan, right?" "What are you talking about?" Lily said with a smile. Lily is a professional supporter. Even the people in the same clan tribe don't think highly of Lily. Even if Lily desperately begs them, they won't let Lily join. Otherwise, Lily wouldn't have teamed up with other clan tribe members. Professional support. Noah seemed to understand what Lily meant. Although the support was a non-combatant, there were differences. Some support was a rookie adventurer in the clan. In order to support the superior adventurers of the same clan, they would be responsible for acting as support. It could be said that they played the role of learning how their seniors fought. There were also some supporters who were hired by the team to support them. This kind of support was often no longer an adventurer for various reasons. They were looked down upon by those adventurers and were ruthlessly treated. Lily should be the latter, right? In order to be able to eat, Lily can only join the team of other clan. Lily said this with a fake smile. Lord Noah, don't look down on Lily. Lily is already very grateful. Hearing this, Noah kept looking at Lily and did not look away. Lord Noah. Lily's pretty face was slightly red. Lily will be very embarrassed if you keep looking at me like this. Noah did not speak, but still looked at Lily. After a while, he looked away and narrowed his eyes slightly. Although she said that she was grateful and embarrassed, Noah did not see any similar emotions in Lily's eyes. While Noah and Lily were chatting, Bale's battle was almost over. Then, Lily should continue to work. Lily seemed to change the topic. Lily will go first. After that, Lily walked in the direction of Bale. Looking at the petite girl carrying a huge backpack, Noah sighed. Another person with a story. Chapter 869. The sky gradually darkened. When the sky was almost completely dark, Noah led Bale and Lily out of the Tower of Babel and to the central square. Lily, who was carrying a backpack that was several times larger than her body, came before Noah and Bale and bowed. "Thank you, lords, for your help today." No need for that. Bale did not seem to be good at handling other people's kindness. His timid personality made him flustered. "I didn't do anything to deserve your thanks. Please raise your head." "No matter what, thank you, lords." Lily raised her head and looked at Noah and Bale with the same innocent smile on her face. Then, regarding the distribution of the loot, Lily didn't finish her sentence, but her intention was clear. Since she had joined the team, her motive was very simple. She wanted to get a share of the loot. In the same team, under normal circumstances, the spoils of war would be divided equally. However, Noah did not intend to share the loot equally. Although we are talking about the loot, there should be very few magic stones and dropped equipment, right? Noah said. "I don't want it." "You two can share it," Lily said. That day, they were not there to earn magic stones and dropped equipment. Instead, they were there to let Bale learn some combat skills. Furthermore, Bale's combat skills were not very mature. Hence, after buying the equipment at noon and entering the dungeon for half a day, Bale did not defeat many monsters and did not obtain any equipment. Furthermore, the first to fourth floors were only accessible to the best of the best. The magic stones dropped by the monsters there were pathetically small. He estimated that the magic stones that he had earned in half a day would not even be enough for 3,000 Varus. Noah did not want to share the money. "Then I don't want it either," Bale said hurriedly. "It's because of me that you earned so little. Moreover, I have learned a lot today. I don't want the money." "Is that so?" Lily maintained her smile. "Then, I won't reject your kindness. I hope that if I encounter any difficulties in the future, you can continue to employ me." After saying that, Lily bowed again. "I'll take my leave." Lily did not wait for Noah and Bale to reply. She blended into the crowd and disappeared. After a while, Noah turned around and walked in the direction of the Tower of Babel. "Let's go." Bale was taken aback and chased after him. "Leader, is this the way home? We have to go to the Tower of Babel before going home." Noah shrugged his shoulders. "Otherwise, you won't have a weapon tomorrow." No weapons." Bale was stunned. His hand unconsciously reached for the back of his waist. "Leader, what are you talking about? My weapon isn't." Halfway through his words, Bale's face suddenly froze, and his pair of eyes became rounder and rounder. Seeing this, Noah could not help but laugh. "Your weapon is gone, isn't it?" "Yes." Bale's weapon, the level 3 weapon worth hundreds of thousands of Varus, had disappeared from Bale's waist without a trace. "Commander! Commander!" Bale turned his head stiffly and looked at Noah, tears welling up in the corners of his eyes. "Don't worry about me." Noah sighed. "Your weapon was stolen. I found out long ago." "It was stolen." Bale's face quickly turned pale. For Bale, who was born in the countryside and was very poor, hundreds of thousands of Varus was a huge amount of wealth. In less than half a day, Bale had lost such a huge amount of wealth. It was easy to imagine how he felt. However, Noah also said that he had found out that Bale's weapon was stolen long ago. Or rather, Lily joined Noah's team because she wanted to steal Bale's weapon? That's right. The one who stole Bale's weapon was Lily. When Lily had been secretly glancing at the weapon on Bale's back, Noah had more or less noticed Lily's purpose. After all, it was a weapon worth hundreds of thousands of Varus, and it was a product of Hephaestus's spawn. As long as it was a product of Hephaestus's spawn, as long as it was of a certain grade, it would be allowed to use the Hephaestus brand. On the scabbard of Bale's weapon, there was a symbol representing the brand of Hephaestus's spawn. Seeing that symbol, anyone would know that the weapon in the scabbard was a product of Hephaestus's spawn, and it was worth hundreds of thousands of Varus. It was natural that someone would have bad intentions. At first, Noah thought that if Lily really did make a move on Bale's weapon, then it would not be too late to deal with her. But later, Noah changed his mind. If that money can let her live a better life and turn over a new leaf, then it's worth it. Noah looked at the pale Bale and smiled bitterly. Don't think too much. If I really want to make money, I only need to stay in the dungeon for a day, and I can earn several times more than that. Do you understand? Yes. Bale hung his head dejectedly. In this way, Noah and Bale spent another half an hour in the shop of Hephaestus's spawn and bought a second level 3 weapon. Then they left the Tower of Babel. The moment they left the Tower of Babel, Noah felt a burning gaze on his back from the direction of the Tower of Babel. In response, Noah just narrowed his eyes and left without looking back. On the top floor of the Tower of Babel, Freya, who was holding a glass of red wine, looked down with a seductive smile on her face. I didn't expect that child to have such a beautiful companion with such a beautiful soul. I wonder which spawn he belongs to. Freya suddenly pursed her lips as if she could not hold back her laughter. Forget it. Although that child is also very beautiful, compared to him, he is still too small. Comparisons were odious. Comparisons were odious. If it was in the past, Freya would definitely chase after such a beautiful soul. However, after discovering Noah's soul, which was brighter than the sun, Freya realized that the beautiful souls she used to chase after were simply too small. Compared to you, no matter what kind of child he is just a small flame. Freya said in an extremely infatuated tone. I only have you in my eyes. I love you. After saying this, Freya stretched out her hand as if she wanted to grab something. Her expression was very lax. Beside her, the strong orc lowered his head and was expressionless. After a long time, he murmured. Noah. Dole, Lord God. Bale opened the door and walked into the house in a dejected state. We're back, oh. You're back. Hestia, who was lying on the sofa and reading a book, sat up. When she saw Bale's dejected appearance, she was startled and looked at Noah, who was walking behind Bale. What's wrong with him? It's nothing. Noah spread his hands. He just can't get over it. Can't get over it. Hestia tilted her head in confusion, but she didn't ask. Instead, she glanced at the dejected Bale and noticed his equipment. Did you change your equipment? Well. Noah scratched his cheek. He can't always wear the standard equipment given by the guild, right? You're right. Hestia nodded and looked at Noah with a gratified expression. As expected of Noah, you know how to take care of the younger generation. Hearing Hestia's words, Noah suddenly smiled. You have one too. Me? Hestia was stunned. Noah then put the bag he had been carrying in his hand on the table in front of Hestia. A gift for you. After saying this, Noah returned to his room with a smile. Hestia stared blankly at the bag on the table. After a while, she reacted and picked it up. Inside the bag was a very luxurious piece of clothing. It was a formal dress. Hestia involuntarily hugged the bag in her arms and closed her eyes. The corners of her mouth slowly rose into a satisfied smile. Chapter 870. In the following period of time, Noah was not in a hurry to continue to improve his ability value, but to hone Bale's fighting skills. He had been wandering back and forth between the first to the fourth floor. If Noah wanted to continue to improve his ability value, he would probably have to go to the lower and deeper levels. Once he went to the lower and deeper levels, it would take him 2 to 3 days to go back and forth. Since he had been away for half a month, if he left immediately after coming back, Hestia would probably complain. Therefore, Noah was not in a hurry. He gave himself a period of time to familiarize himself with his current strength. He mixed with Bale in the first to fourth floor while observing his current strength. After leveling up to LV2, even if he did not use Authority and Gate of Babylon, Noah's strength did indeed make a leap. Not to mention the enhancement brought by magic to magic and magic, just the 4 basic abilities of strength, durability, dexterity, and agility to Noah's body made Noah benefit a lot. Now, even if Noah did not use enhance magic, he should be able to fight with Saber and Berserker in close combat. Of course, he would still be at a disadvantage. At this rate, when Noah was promoted to LV3, he should be able to compete with Saber and Berserker, a servant at the level of Berserker. If he leveled up to LV4, he would definitely be able to suppress Saber and Berserker in close combat. As for leveling up to LV5 or even LV6, or perhaps higher levels, Noah felt excited just thinking about it. After being clear about his strength and having a visual estimate of his future development, Noah naturally wouldn't be in a hurry. Therefore, he decided to stay in Eulalie for the time being. On this day, Noah and Bale still went down to the 4th floor of the dungeon, moving forward in the same dim passage. Pod G. Along with the sound of cracking, a wall in front of Noah and Belle suddenly broke apart, allowing 2 skinny monsters to break free from the inside. They raised their hands proudly and let out unpleasant cries. Goblin. Noah took a step back out of habit. Belle. Yes, Commander. Belle nodded his head and drew his dagger from his waist. He then charged towards the 2 goblins. G.A. G.A. The 2 goblins discovered Belle and roared at him as they charged at him. Their eyes were bloodthirsty, and they didn't seem to care about the human charging at them. They were only concerned about whether the human's flesh was enough for them to feast on. Under such circumstances, the distance between the 2 sides was rapidly closing. Whoosh! At this moment, Bale's speed suddenly soared, and in a flash, he dove under the 2 leaping goblins. G.A. G.A. The low IQ goblins didn't expect the human in front of them to be so fast, and their sharp claws paused in midair. Bale suddenly raised his head, his face full of surprise. Really? Leader? What do you think? Noah glanced at Bale and walked forward. In order to prevent you from going down alone and ending up in the stomach of a monster, it seems that I need to show you the difference between you and the monsters on the lower floors. After saying this, Noah turned his head and smiled at Bale. That smile made Bale's hair stand on end. Then, Bale heard Noah's words. Let's be clear, unless you're about to die, I won't do anything. Bale's face suddenly twitched violently, the anticipation and surprise on his face turned into the usual nervousness and fear. He braced himself and followed behind Noah. Just like this, under Noah's lead, Bale passed through level 5, passed through a flight of stairs on level 6, and arrived at level 7. The air on level 7 was filled with an atmosphere that made one's hair stand on end. When he arrived here, Bale was more or less regretful, and spoke nervously. Leader, I think we should go back. Didn't you want to go down? Noah said with a half-smile. I wanted to bring you to level 17 to see the floor master. Floor master. Bale took a deep breath and shook his head desperately. No. There's no need. Let's go back. After saying this, Bale immediately wanted to run back. However, at this time, Noah's pupils constricted, and he grabbed Bale's shoulder. Woo 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 woo. In the next second, a violent roar filled the entire space, drilling into Noah and Bale's ears. Bale was completely frozen on the spot. Noah, on the other hand, saw it clearly. He saw it, at the end of the tunnel, a monster with the head of a cow and the body of a human. It was more than 2 meters tall, with strong muscles, sharp horns, and blood-red eyes, and it was madly charging towards them with heavy footsteps. This monster was very similar to the monster Noah massacred on level 37. Minotaur. Chapter 871. Ooh, 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 ooh. The Minotaur, a monster with a minotaur's head and a human body, charged toward Noah and Bale like a chariot. Its heavy footsteps even caused the ground to tremble slightly, and the air was suddenly filled with a terrifying atmosphere. Seeing the Minotaur, which was of a completely different level from him, rushing toward him with an astonishing momentum, Bale was completely stunned on the spot. His body trembled, but he could not move. That was natural. In terms of classification, the Minotaur was a LV2 monster. Monsters of this level generally only appeared in the middle level, and it was rather deep in the middle level. According to the threat assessment made by the guild based on the monsters on each floor of the dungeon, the Minotaur was recognized as the most threatening monster in the middle level. In terms of strength, the Minotaur was the strongest in the middle level, except for Goliath, the floor owner. Bale was only a LV1 monster. He was a novice adventurer at LV1. Even facing the monsters on the 7th floor was dangerous, let alone facing the strongest monster on the 24th floor and above, except for the floor owners. Therefore, in the face of the deadly monster that was rushing toward him, Bale's mind was completely blank, and he did not know what to do. Fortunately, Bale was not the only one here. Next to Bale, there was a deep area that had been explored many levels deeper than the middle level. That level was just a small matter, but if they were serious, even the gods could not ignore its existence. ALV2 Minotaur. The strongest monster except for Goliath. For Noah, who could easily defeat Goliath when he was at LV1, now that he had reached LV2, there was an insurmountable barrier between him and the Minotaur. Clang! In the space around the Minotaur that was rushing toward them, a golden light rose, and golden ripples fluctuated and covered the surroundings of the Minotaur. Immediately afterwards, silver chains with sharp spikes at the front ends shot out from the golden ripples like pythons. In a flash, they coiled around the Minotaur's body and wrapped around its limbs. Paw! The Minotaur, who was rushing forward, was directly pulled back by the chains tightly wrapped around its body and limbs, and hung in the air. Ooh, 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 ooh. Amidst the berserk roar, the monster named Minotaurus began to struggle, causing the chains that tightly bound its body to emit crisp sounds. Unfortunately, no matter how strong the Minotaurus was, his muscles bulged as he struggled frantically, but he still couldn't break free from the silver chains. Heaven's Lock Enkidu. For enemies with divinity, it was a treasure that was like a natural enemy. For the Minotaur that did not have divinity, the true power of the treasure called Enkidu could not be exerted. However, even so, the heavenly lock was still a noble relic. Even if it was used to deal with an opponent without divinity, it was still much stronger than a normal chain. It would not be so easy for a LV2 monster to break it. Looking at the Minotaur that was constantly roaring and struggling, Noah frowned. Why did the Minotaur come here? It was not that monsters could not cross floors and leave their own territory. However, that usually only happened between 2 or 3 adjacent floors. The Minotaur was a monster that was born on floors above the 15th floor. There were 8 floors to cross from the 7th floor. This was a bit abnormal. Leader. Leader. Bell came back to his senses and grabbed Noah's shoulder, shouting in horror. It's the Minotaur. It's the Minotaur. I have eyes, so I saw it clearly, Noah said helplessly. However, your eyes are not very good. Bell, I've already caught it. What are you still afraid of? Caught. Caught it. Bell was stunned. He looked at the struggling Minotaur timidly, but there was no lack of surprise in his tone. Was that done by you, leader? If it wasn't me, who else could it be? Noah did not have time to pay attention to Bell. Ignoring the timid Bell, he walked forward and came in front of the Minotaur. Looking at Noah, who was less than 2 meters away from it, the Minotaur struggled. Its red eyes stared at Noah, and white smoke was coming out of its nostrils. It roared at Noah again and again. However, there was a faint hint of fear in its roar. Obviously, even though the Minotaur only had the intelligence of a wild beast, it still understood. The human in front of it, who was much shorter and thinner than it, was definitely not someone it could touch. It also understood how dangerous this human was. In the face of the Minotaur's fearful roar, Noah's expression did not change. He just stared at it. Why did you cross so many floors to come here? The Minotaur, who could not speak, naturally would not answer this question. However, this question did not bother Noah for long. In the next moment, the person who could give Noah the answer appeared. Duh. Accompanied by a series of hurried footsteps, 2 figures rushed out from the end of the passage where the Minotaur had just appeared. They were imprinted in Noah's eyes. Noah turned his head and looked over. When he saw the 2 figures, he was stunned. One of them was a beautiful girl with elegant blonde hair, while the other was an orc youth with a lightning-shaped tattoo on his face. They were Ace and Bert, who had followed Loki's family on an expedition to the underground city more than a month ago. Noah exclaimed in shock. Why are you guys here again? Ace did not expect to see Noah here, and a hint of astonishment appeared on her face. Bert was even speechless. You little brat, why are you here? Since witnessing Noah's strength more than a month ago, Bert had not found fault with Noah. He did not even face Noah on the 18th floor, as though he was planning to disappear from Noah's sight. After reaching the 18th floor, Noah had not seen Bert face to face. However, now it seemed that Bert had only stopped finding fault with Noah. It did not mean that he was not hostile to him. At the very least, this werewolf definitely did not have a good impression of Noah. As for AIC, after seeing Noah, her tense expression gradually relaxed. She shifted her gaze to the Minotaur who was tightly bound by Noah's noble artifact. She placed her hand on the hilt of the sword at her waist and pulled it out. AIC's expression changed slightly. AIC's expression changed slightly. At this moment, there were 2 scabbards at Ace's waist. One of them contained Ace's original weapon. The other one contained the sword and the stone. Ace had pulled out the sword and the stone. Holding the dazzling sword of the king, Ace walked step by step toward the Minotaur. The Minotaur seemed to have sensed the fatal danger and struggled even more frantically. However, no matter how frantically the Minotaur struggled, it was still unable to break free from the sturdy chains. Poochie! Without any suspense, the sword and the stone pierced through the Minotaur's heart. The Minotaur's roar came to an abrupt end. Pang! The sturdy body suddenly turned into a cloud of dust and disappeared. Seeing that Ace did not hesitate to kill the Minotaur, Noah understood. It seemed that the Minotaur had come to the 7th level because of the adventures of Loki's family. As expected, nothing good happens every time I meet you. Noah's furrowed brows relaxed and he smacked his lips. No, it's better to leave first. After saying that, Noah wanted to call Baal. However, when he saw Baal's current appearance, he was stunned. This was because at this moment, Baal's face was smeared with red. He stared blankly at Ace and murmured as if he was in a dream. It's really a chance encounter. The corner of Noah's mouth twitched. He really wanted to beat this guy up. Chapter 872. Perhaps it was because of the sudden appearance of the LV-2 Minotaurus on this floor. The monsters that were supposed to be on this floor seemed to have been driven away, causing the air to be filled with an indescribable silence. Wang, the silver chains that bound the Minotaurus slowly turned into light particles and dissipated into the air along with the golden ripples that were contracting in the air. AIC turned around and looked at Noah after the golden ripples and silver chains had completely disappeared. Her usually expressionless face showed some hesitation, but she still asked Noah with trepidation. Are you guys alright? The one who answered AIC's question wasn't Noah, but the displeased Bert. Even Goliath was killed. If this kid were to die in the hands of a Minotaurus, it would be a joke. As he said that, Bert glanced at Baal, who was standing beside Noah and looking at Abe in a daze. Baal's face was flushed red, and he looked a little embarrassed. Of course, the white-haired kid over there is another matter. If not for him, he would have died in the hands of the Minotaurus and been eaten clean. Baal came back to his senses and recalled the ferocious monster that was roaring at the sky. Now, he felt some lingering fear. Indeed. If Noah had not been there, Baal, a novice adventurer, would definitely have been gnawed to the bone. Unless he escaped. Originally, Baal was still looking forward to the dungeon and hoped to find a chance encounter there. Now, Baal, who was naive, finally understood what kind of place he was in and what kind of dream he was having. The thought of what would happen to him if Noah wasn't around made Baal, who had a timid personality, turn pale. What's the matter with that Minotaurus? Noah ignored Bert's harsh tone and looked directly at AIC. The Minotaurus that crossed so many floors to reach the 7th floor must have something to do with you, right? Sorry. AIC lowered her head slightly like a child who was about to be scolded by her parents. Her pretty face was filled with dejection. We encountered a group of Minotaurus on our way back from the expedition. We were halfway through the battle when the Minotaurus fled. With just this sentence, Noah understood more than half of the situation. I see. So that's why a Minotaurus ran to the 7th floor without a reason. You Loki clan really know how to make trouble for people. AIC lowered her head even more, and even Bert seemed to be choking and unable to speak. The Minotaurus's escape. Minotaurus and fled to another floor. This wasn't to be joked. There were other adventurers in the dungeon. However, not all adventurers were as powerful as Noah, AIC, and Bert. For an adventurer like Baal, whose strength was not on par with the Minotaurus, it would be a nightmare if he encountered a large group of Minotaurus. If many adventurers were unable to return because of the Rocky clan, then presumably, the clan of the guild and other factions would definitely not sit back and do nothing, right? If not for Noah, Baal might have really died in the hands of the Minotaurus. It was no wonder AIC and Bert had chased after him in such a hurry. I'm sorry. AIC apologized again, her voice filled with dejection. Coupled with her pitiful face, even Noah couldn't bear to see her like this. If even Noah was like this, what more Baal? That. Baal blushed and said shyly. Please. Please raise your head. Seeing Baal's love-struck expression, Noah couldn't bear to look at him. It couldn't be helped. It was too embarrassing. Though he knew that Bale had a dream of finding a chance encounter in the dungeon, he didn't expect him to treat his encounter with AIC as a chance encounter. What happened to saving the princess in the Devil King's castle? What happened to saving a beauty in the witch's forest? There wasn't a hero saving the damsel in distress scenario, yet he treated this as a chance encounter. Noah was speechless. Forget it. Since a large group of Minotaurus rushed into the dungeon, it's probably not suitable for combat training. Let's call it a day. Noah sighed faintly. I hope you can deal with the aftermath properly. It's best not to let any victims appear. AIC nodded repeatedly, causing Bert to snort and turn his head away. Then, Noah turned around and saw Bale, who was shyly looking at AIC. His eyelids twitched. Bale, it seems like you can't bear to leave this place. I won't force you. I hope you won't encounter a second Minotaurus. After saying that, Noah walked toward the entrance to the 6th floor without looking back. Bale was shocked. He didn't hesitate and quickly chased after Noah. Leader. Wait for me. After a while, Noah and Bale disappeared from AIC's and Bert's sight. TSK, Bert smacked his lips. He actually has the time to care about such a small fry. How carefree. After saying that, Bert turned around and walked in another direction. Hey, AIC, don't dilly-dally there. There are other Minotaurus waiting for us to deal with. AIC nodded her head in silence. However, she kept looking forward, tightly gripping the dazzling sword and the stone in her hand. After a long time, she turned around and walked in the other direction. Leader. Leader. Bale shouted excitedly as soon as he walked out of the Tower of Babel and arrived at the central square. Look! We can really find a chance encounter in the buried city. You really can't learn your lesson. Noah sighed as he walked forward. Don't tell me you still want to go to the lower floors. Do you really want to meet a monster like the Minotaurus again? The excitement on Bale's face froze, and his excitement died down. That's true. I don't object to you continuing to have such thoughts, but, Belle, you'd better figure out what you're capable of, Noah said bluntly. Even if you want to go to the lower floors, you have to wait until you have the corresponding strength. Otherwise, even if you meet a level 1 adventurer like Ace Wallenstein who has the strength of LV5, do you have the courage to go up and pursue her? As Noah's realistic words came out, Bale's mood became more and more depressed. In the end, he almost burst into tears. I know you're looking forward to those stories where the hero saves the damsel in distress, and I've never thought of denying it. However, I don't agree with you biting off more than you can chew. Noah glanced at Bale. After all, the hero saves the damsel in distress, but you haven't become a hero yet. After that, Noah did not say anything else. Only Bale was left, his head lowered as he fell into deep thought and self-reflection. On this day, Noah and Bale did not hide in the buried city all day long. Instead, they spent a leisurely day. The next day, when Noah was still asleep, he heard a sorrowful cry, which woke him up in fright. He bounced up from the bed abruptly. This is Bale's voice. Noah hurriedly got up and opened the door in a flurry. Bang! Almost at the same time, the door to the room on the right side of Noah was also forcefully opened. Hestia also rushed out of the room with an anxious look on her face. Her hair was loose, and she didn't tie up her waist-length hair. What's wrong? What's going on? Apparently, Hestia was also startled awake. Then, Noah and Hestia saw the situation in the hall clearly. Bale, who was in casual clothes, was hiding in the corner and looking in the direction of the door with a red face. There were 2 girls there. One of them had tied her red hair into a ponytail. The other had long, flowing blonde hair. Hestia exclaimed in surprise. Loki. Noah was also stunned. AIC Wallenstein. It was Loki and AIC. Chapter 873. In the hall, Hestia and Loki were sitting face to face, separated by a table. At this time, the two goddesses were staring at each other fiercely, as if they wanted to swallow each other alive. They seemed to have a deep hatred for each other. Behind Hestia and Loki, Baal and AIC stood respectively. AIC was expressionless as usual, but she seemed to be interested in this house. She was secretly looking left and right, curiously sizing up the surroundings. Baal was also secretly sizing up the area in front of him. To be more precise, he was secretly looking at AIC. His face was red, and he was bashful, just like a typical innocent young man. Noah was the only one who sat next to Hestia and Loki, who were glaring at each other fiercely. He rested his chin on his hand and looked at Hestia and Loki for a while. After a long time, he spoke as if he was tired of it. After a while, he finally said, "How long are you going to keep this up?" "Of course." Hestia answered without hesitation. "After this airport leaves, of course." "Who are you calling an airport?" Loki almost exploded. "You are a poor dwarf who can't even afford a glass of wine. How dare you laugh at me? I'm not a poor dwarf." Hestia raised her head and puffed out her chest proudly. "I've been reborn a long time ago. My Noah is good at making money. Even your base camp is such a shabby little house. How dare you say that you've been reborn?" Loki raised his chin with an arrogant look. "My family tribe is more than enough to house 1,000 people. If I want, I can live on the top floor of the Tower of Babel at any time. A poor dwarf like you won't be able to live there for the rest of your life. It's only a matter of time." Hestia was not affected by Loki's words at all. She was still holding her head high. With my Noah's ability, he could deal with Warren even before receiving that favor. When he becomes a level 1 adventurer like LV-5 or even LV-6, even Eulalie's ultimate weapon won't be able to do anything to my Noah. At that time, I can live in a base camp that can accommodate 1,000 people or on the top floor of the Tower of Babel. Ha! Don't make me laugh. Rocky was not to be outdone. Do you think that LV-5 or even LV-6 is something that can be easily promoted? I say, Loki, you're still a god, right? Hestia mocked back. Do you really think that my Noah can't reach LV-5 or LV-6? If you really think so, then do I have to question your judgment as a god? Loki's face began to twist. However, Hestia was right. As long as one knew Noah's ability, no matter who it was, no one would doubt that Noah could reach LV-5 or even LV-6. What was needed to level up was a great achievement, and even the gods had to praise it. Noah was able to force Ace, who was at LV-5, to retreat before receiving the favor. In terms of great achievements, it was amazing enough. With such strength, Noah had no difficulty in challenging high-level opponents when he was at a low level. He could also continue to build such a great achievement as defeating high-level opponents at a low level. At that time, the EXP he obtained would definitely be the highest level. If it was used to level up, it would be more than enough to reach LV-5 or even LV-6. After all, before receiving the grace, Noah was already able to force Ace, who could be said to be the strongest existence in LV-5, to retreat. After receiving the grace, it was impossible for him to not be able to do it, right? Then, before reaching LV-5, Noah could always obtain such a great achievement as defeating high-level opponents at a low level. Reaching LV-5 was only a matter of time. It was almost certain that he would reach LV-6. As a god, it was impossible for Loki not to understand this. Loki just didn't want Hestia to be too proud. "You poor little dwarf." With a twitching face, Loki said hatefully. "It's just good luck to dig up a treasure, it should have been mine." At this time, Loki was really regretting it. As soon as the expeditionary force led by Finn returned to Eulalia, Loki learned about Noah's deeds in the underground city from a group of children. He could easily kill the floor master equivalent to LV4. Even the elves didn't resist the pure heart. A magic sword that will never be worn out. An independent space that can store items. The incredible deeds made Rocky's heart feel like it was being scratched by a cat. He felt excited, interesting, and at the same time, deeply regretful. Why couldn't he dig up Noah at that time? Undoubtedly, Loki was the first person Noah discovered after he came to Eulalia, wasn't he? As a result, such a treasure was taken away by someone else, and it was taken away by Hestia, who had always been against him. Loki really wanted to hit the wall. This kind of mood made Loki unwillingly question Noah, who was beside him with a look of annoyance. "Why did you choose this poor little dwarf? Where can I not compare with this poor little dwarf?" Hearing this, Noah glanced at Loki and said such a sentence with a smile. "Her figure is better than yours." At this moment, everyone present seemed to have heard a kapuchit sound, as if a sharp weapon had pierced through someone's body. Of course, there was no such sound. As for why, Noah's words were like an arrow that pierced Loki's heart. It was absolutely impossible to hear such a sound. It was such a sentence that made Loki, who had been arrogant until now, seem to have suffered a heavy blow. He lowered his head, and his whole body was surrounded by an atmosphere that was more sorrowful than the death of his heart. Ha 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 ha. Hestia, on the other hand, laughed proudly. She even puffed out her chest and deliberately emphasized her unscientific upper body. Even Aeth frowned and couldn't help but put her hand on her chest. Bale, who had been secretly looking at Aeth, instantly blushed and almost spat out steam. "Okay, stop fooling around." Noah sighed and went straight to the point. "Tell us, why did you come to find us?" Everyone in Eulalia knew that Hestia and Loki didn't get along well. Since that was the case, and Loki had personally come to this house, which was equivalent to Hestia's headquarters, he couldn't have come just to quarrel with Hestia, right? Truth be told, Loki didn't want to come here. The person who wanted to come here was Aeth. Aeth, who was standing behind Loki, silently took out the sword and the stone that was in a scabbard from her waist. She walked up to Noah and looked at him. She held the sword and the stone in its scabbard and handed it to Noah. "I'm here to fulfill my promise." More than a month ago, Noah had lent the sword and the stone to Aeth on the 18th floor of the underground city. At that time, Noah said that Aeth would give him an answer after she experienced the power of the sword and the stone. In the end, did Aeth want to become stronger or did she want power? Aeth was undoubtedly here to answer this question. "This sword is really very powerful," Aeth said sincerely. She also said something shocking. "With it, I defeated the floor master of the 37th floor." Aeth's words caused Bale and Hestia to suck in a breath of cold air. Defeated the floor master of the 37th floor. Even Noah was slightly surprised, let alone Bale and Hestia. The 37th floor. Noah had been there more than once. He was very clear about the level of monsters on that floor. On the 37th floor, there were not only LV3 monsters but also LV4 monsters. The level of the floor master was 2 levels above the level of the monsters on that floor. Generally speaking, the 2 levels were added to the monsters on that floor with the highest level. In other words, the level of the floor master of the 37th floor was 2 levels above LV4. Thus, the level of the floor master of the 37th floor was obvious. LV6. Aeth had defeated the LV6 floor master. Chapter 874. Originally, in this world, the gap between levels was not so easy to fill. To put it bluntly, 10 LV-1s could not defeat a LV-2s, not to mention the gap between levels. And the 10 LV-1s here were all LV-1s who had reached the level of AB stage in all aspects, while the LV-2s had just started to level up and their basic abilities were reset to 0. One could only imagine how big the gap between the levels was. So, when Noah forced Aeth to retreat without receiving the favor, even Loki was shocked. Bert kept saying that he couldn't accept it, and even Finn tried to test it, because of this. So, how big was the gap between LV-5 and LV-6? If one were to describe it in one sentence, then even if it wasn't the difference between heaven and earth, and it wasn't to the point of making one feel despair, it was still very shocking. Not to mention, if this LV-6 was a floor master with amazing ability, then it was even more amazing. Just like Goliath, although his level was only LV-4, but his strength and durability were enough to match LV-5 or even LV-6, the 37th floor master must have exceeded the scope of LV-6 in some places. Therefore, generally speaking, within the same level, it was impossible for an adventurer to defeat a floor master alone, let alone challenge a higher level. However, Aeth did it. With the level of LV-5, she challenged a LV-6 floor master and won. This great achievement was definitely enough to let Aeth rise to LV-6. That's right. Loki seemed to have found a chance to fight back. He jumped up and laughed at Hestia. Just yesterday, Aeth's level rose, and now it is a veritable LV-6. LV-6. Hestia was speechless as if she had swallowed a fly. Baal looked at Aeth blankly, as if he finally understood the gap between Aeth and himself. He no longer hesitated, but lowered his head, and his expression became uncertain. Only Noah looked straight at Aeth, who was holding the sword and the stone, and asked, "You have released the true name of the sword and the stone?" Aeth nodded. In other words, during the battle with the owner of the 37th floor, Aeth had used the golden sword of victory, Caliban, relic. With the help of a relic that was at least grade A, she was able to kill the owner of the LV-6 floor. It was precisely because she had experienced the true power of the sword and the stone that Aeth could say those words. This magic sword really won't wear out, and it won't even have any wear and tear. Thanks to it, I was able to defeat the floor master of the 37th floor without much damage and rise to LV-6. Aeth gently stroked the sword and the stone that had accompanied her for more than a month. However, Riverius said that although this magic sword won't wear out, it requires a lot of mental energy. I've only used it once, and that time, I almost fainted. In this world, when using magic, one's mental strength had to be converted into mana in order to successfully use magic. And releasing the true name of the relic would undoubtedly consume an excessive amount of mana. Aeth didn't have the same mana as Noah and the heroic spirits and magicians in the world of Type Moon. Therefore, when using the relic, the mana consumed would become the kind of mana that was converted from mental strength in this world. Naturally, if one used it excessively and consumed too much mental strength, they would fall into a state similar to coma. This was also the reason why people in this world needed to be cautious when using magic. However, since Aeth had borrowed the power of the golden sword of victory, Caliban, it was not impossible to defeat the LV-6 floor owner. Originally, the relic was a trump card that was more like a trump card than the magic of this world. Even the heroic spirits relied on it, let alone Aeth. In other words, you are very satisfied with the power of the sword and the stone, right? Noah didn't take the sword and the stone, but looked directly at Aeth. Haven't you thought of monopolizing this power? Rocky was the first to frown when he heard this. Kid, what do you mean? Noah just smiled and didn't speak. He didn't even look at Loki. He just stared at AIC as if he wanted to see through her heart. AIC slightly tightened the grip of the sword and the stone and fell into silence. Seeing this, Noah curled his lips and smiled. That's right, you actually want this kind of power. You don't want to become stronger, you just want to obtain power. The whole place suddenly became silent. This time, even Loki didn't choose to speak and remained silent. On the contrary, AIC slowly relaxed her grip on the sword and the stone. After a while, she spoke frankly. I do want power, not just to become stronger. Then, the sword and the stone should be able to give you the power you want, right? Noah seemed to be guiding something as he smiled at AIC. Don't you want to get the sword and the stone? I do. This time, AIC answered without any hesitation. However, this is not mine. Noah did not say anything that sounded like an interrogation. Instead, he looked at AIC's clear eyes. AIC did not turn her gaze away. She met Noah's gaze and stared back at him. After a while, Noah suddenly smiled. You will become stronger, I guarantee it. AIC blinked her eyes and asked innocently. Really? Of course, Noah said. I can sense that you have an unparalleled thirst for power, but you haven't lost yourself because of it. You might force yourself and whip yourself endlessly in order to obtain power, but you won't sacrifice the important things around you or even in your heart in order to obtain power. Therefore, you will be very tired, you will fall, you will collapse because of excessive effort, but there will never be a time when you will feel regret or guilt. This way, you will definitely be able to become stronger. After saying that, Noah extended his hand to take the sword and the stone from AIC's hand. Then, Noah said, Are you interested in AIC? Are you interested in trying another way to improve yourself that doesn't rely on God's grace? AIC's eyes flashed, and the light in them gradually brightened. Wait! Hestia hurriedly called out. Noah, what are you planning to do? That's right, that's right. Loki also shouted. What are you planning to do to my AIC? I say, what are you guys so nervous about? Noah rolled his eyes. I just want to teach her something. It's not like I want to eat her. Is there a need to be so nervous? Why do you want to teach this, Warren? Hestia said with dissatisfaction. You can teach Bale too. Belle? Noah glanced at Belle, whose face was full of anticipation, and laughed. It's still too early for him. Bale's head drooped in disappointment. I don't agree. Loki continued to shout. Although I'm interested in the other way to improve myself without relying on the grace of God, I don't need the grace of the poor shorty. I'm not teaching you, Noah asked strangely. Why would it become a grace for you? AIC is my baby. Loki said. If you give her grace, you are giving me grace. Noah was speechless. Loki, I also want to ask you, AIC couldn't help but speak up and said very sincerely to Loki. I really want to become stronger. Then why don't you use the grace I gave you to become stronger? Loki's narrowed eyes opened a little, revealing a pair of shrewd eyes. You have now risen to LV6 and are much stronger than before. You can continue to become stronger in the future. There is no need to use other methods to force yourself. Can't you use your own way to become stronger? Don't you believe in the grace I gave you? It's not like that, AIC said weakly. I just want to become stronger. Loki didn't know what to say. Under such circumstances, Noah smiled bitterly. Anyway, you are not in a hurry. Think about it carefully. AIC hesitated for a moment and could only nod. Hestia and Loki looked at each other, snorted, and turned their heads away. Noah was helpless. Why do I feel like I can't get any benefits? Chapter 875. While Loki and Ace were on their way to visit Noah, Hasti, and Baal's base camp, Freya was in a room on the top floor of the towering Tower of Babel in the center of Orly. Freya had noticed what was happening almost immediately. The silver-haired goddess was standing in front of a glass window that was as magnificent as a wall. She was holding a glass of wine in her hand as she swirled the blood-red wine. Her lips curled into a smile, and her charming eyes curved into a crescent moon shape. The radiance of the swordswoman beside Loki has become even more dazzling. She must have leveled up to LV6, right? Freya's eyes could see through the souls of the people in the lower realm. Even though she could not see their ability value, she could roughly judge their level based on the strength and color of their souls. That was why Freya could tell that Ace had leveled up with just a glance. It's a pity that even though the swordswoman's radiance is very dazzling, she is still a far cry from him. Freya squinted her eyes with a smile as she conversed with the burly orc who stood in the corner of the room like a pillar. He stood there motionless like a statue, guarding Freya all the time. Otto, you think so too, don't you? Hearing Freya's words, the burly orc who was called Otto remained in his upright position as he stared at his most revered goddess. He was silent for a while before he spat out a steely and powerful voice. I can't see through everything about others like my lord, so naturally, I can't make a positive answer. But last time, if a LV6 and 4 LV5s on our side couldn't deal with him, then it's natural that the glory of Swordswoman, who had just reached LV6, can't compare with him. When he said this, the orc's tone did not change at all. It was as if the LV6 was not even worth mentioning in Otto's eyes. But if it was someone who had heard of the name Otto, they would not think that there was a problem. If there was a reason, it would be that although it was not to the extent that it was not worth mentioning, the orc named Otto did indeed have the qualifications to look down on a LV6. That's true. Freya glanced at the orc and said with a faint smile. Since even you, the only one who broke through LV6 and reached LV7, known as Eulalie's ultimate weapon, said so, then even I can't find any words to refute. The only LV7. Orly's ultimate weapon. Otto, the orc who was known as the strongest existence in Orly, lowered his head slightly and said without a trace of confusion. My meager strength is just a little bit of light to set off the beauty of the goddess. When she heard this, Freya slowly opened her half-closed eyes and turned her head to look at Otto with an interested smile on her face. I didn't expect that a pure martial artist like you would actually have a time when you would compliment me. Are you worried that I would give all my love to that child? Freya turned her gaze to Otto. The smile on her face was beautiful and cruel. Then it is needless to say about you all, do you understand? Meeting Freya's gaze, Otto stared blankly at his most revered goddess. After a while, he lowered his head. Yes, ha. Freya pursed her lips into a smile. Her face was still red, as if the conversation just now had aroused her inner possessiveness. She closed her eyes. But at first, I wanted to observe this incredible child for a while before deciding how to dote on him. But now, Hestia has him, Loki seems to have taken a liking to him, and even the swordswoman is by his side. I can't wait any longer. After saying this, Freya's eyes turned. She suddenly thought of something and smiled. Otto, tell the children to prepare for a banquet. A banquet? Otto was stunned, but the next second, he calmed down and lowered his head to obey the order. Understood. May I ask who the guests are? As long as it is a god and Eulalia, including their children. Freya's smile grew brighter. Also, you can leave out anyone's invitation, but not Hestia's. Do you understand? Yes. After a short reply, Otto walked out of Freya's room. In the quiet room, Freya once again gazed at the source of the dazzling light. She smiled as if she was drunk on it. I'm looking forward to meeting you, The next day, when Noah came out of the room, Hestia was already sitting on the sofa, staring at an envelope on the table in front of her. Her brows were deeply furrowed, as if she was very distressed. Noah was surprised to see Hestia like this. Did Hestia also know how to make such an expression? Noah walked towards Hestia and asked curiously. "What's wrong? Why do you look so distressed?" "Noah." Hestia raised her head and looked at Noah. The distress on her face didn't decrease but instead increased. This made Noah even more curious. What made Hestia so distressed? Chapter 876. Sitting on the sofa, Hestia crossed her arms as if she was emphasizing her impressive bosom. Her eyes were fixed on an envelope on the table in front of her. She seemed to be in distress. When Noah saw that Hestia didn't seem to have any intention of speaking, he turned to look at the envelope that Hestia was staring at and picked it up. "What's this?" "I haven't opened it yet," Hestia said. "But I guess it's an invitation." "An invitation?" Noah turned his eyes to Hestia. "What kind of invitation letter?" "An invitation from a god." Hestia sighed. "To be more precise, it's an invitation to a banquet held by a god." "A banquet of a god?" Noah was a little surprised. The so-called God's Banquet, to put it bluntly, was a gathering held by the gods who descended from the heaven realm to the lower realm. The gods descended to the mortal world to relieve boredom, find excitement, and have entertainment that couldn't be found in the heavens. A banquet held by a god and invited other gods to have fun together was very common in Eulalia and even in the whole world. Simply put, a banquet was held by a god to relieve boredom and find entertainment. Therefore, there were almost no rules about which god would hold the banquet and which day it would be held. If a god was bored and wanted to hold a banquet, he would hold one. If a god wanted to participate in a banquet and find entertainment, he would attend. The capriciousness and freedom of the gods could be seen from this. Of course, after a god came to the mortal world, he couldn't even use his divine power and had to live like an ordinary person. Naturally, there would be restrictions on his life. For example, before Hestia met Noah, she didn't have a family tribe or work, so there were many gods who were called poor gods. Even if a family tribe was established, the power and strength of the family tribe were very different. Even if some gods wanted to hold a banquet, they didn't have the financial resources. Therefore, most of the gods who held banquets were powerful gods who wanted to show off their status more or less. Since Hestia had received an invitation, it meant that another god was going to hold a banquet. In other words, you just received an invitation to attend the banquet, right? Noah felt a little strange. It's just a banquet. Is there a need to be so distressed? Indeed, the banquets of the gods are held every once in a while. I have received many invitations, so there's nothing strange about this. Hestia reached out her hand and took the envelope from Noah's hand, looking at him with a serious expression. What's strange is that the clan hosting the banquet is Freya's clan. Noah's eyes slightly blinked when he heard the word clan from Hestia's mouth. Freya's family. One of the two most powerful clans in Eulalia's clan. Together with the Loki clan, they were known as the two kings of Ololai.